Good evening, and welcome to the History Dreaming. Tonight we wander through the ruins of cities that no longer breathe, streets once bright with laughter, now silent beneath the weight of centuries. But silence in old places is never empty. It hums with memory, with footsteps that never left and voices that still echo between broken walls. Every fallen empire leaves behind its ghosts, a scribe still writing, a soldier still standing guard, a queen whispering to a throne of dust. These are not hauntings of terror, but of remembrance, echoes of lives too proud to fade. And as we listen, the past begins to move again. So rest easy, traveler of ruins. Let the old cities speak softly through the dark. This is History for Sleep, where even ghosts find peace. I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought in the comments. There was a time when the city lived. Its streets were crowded with merchants calling out their wares, the smell of bread and spiced wine drifting from stalls. Children laughed in courtyards, soldiers clattered their spears along the colonnades, priests intoned hymns that rose like smoke into temple domes. The rhythm of daily life pulsed like a heartbeat, footsteps on stone, coins exchanging hands, voices echoing across markets and squares. To walk there was to be carried by the current of humanity, by its energy and its noise, a tide of breath that seemed eternal. And yet eternity, as all cities learn, is fragile. When collapse comes, it comes slowly, then suddenly. A war that emptied the fields, a famine that dried the wells, a plague that silenced voices overnight. The markets closed, the laughter dimmed, the hymns faltered. Stone walls remained, but their music vanished. The silence did not come as gentle quiet. It came as a presence heavy and unrelenting. Streets once alive became hollow. The air once thick with smoke and voices grew empty, and in that emptiness the imagination awakened. Absence itself began to whisper. To walk those streets after the crowds have gone is to hear what is no longer there. Every arch seems to echo with footsteps. Every shattered gate holds the impression of a voice long dissolved. The silence does not soothe. It unsettles. It is not the silence of nature, of forests or mountains. It is the silence of interruption, the silence of something missing. Here silence is loud. It presses into the ears, it fills the chest, it demands attention. The absence becomes presence, and that presence is haunting. The ancients knew this feeling well. They spoke of ruined cities as places where ghosts wandered, not only of the dead but of memory itself. In Babylon's collapse, in Troy's burning, in Carthage's salted soil, people claimed to hear voices long after the inhabitants were gone. They believed the earth remembered cries of battle, the stones remembered prayers, the air remembered the noise of life. Ghost stories rose not from shadows, but from silence too heavy to bear. And so ruins became haunted, not because spirits lingered, but because silence itself carried weight. Picture a lone traveler entering such a city at dusk. The wind stirs dust across abandoned avenues. Broken statues lean in watchfulness. Shadows lengthen from shattered pillars. He pauses, for though no one is there, he feels observed. His footsteps sound too loud, as if the stones amplify them in mockery of the silence. He thinks he hears laughter in the distance, faint and impossible, carried by the air. He listens again, only the wind. Yet the impression remains. The city itself is listening. The city itself remembers. This is the ghost story of absence, more potent than any spectre. For absence does not erase, it exaggerates. When voices are gone, we imagine them louder. When footsteps are missing, we hear them more clearly. The human mind resists voids. It fills silence with echoes, emptiness with memory. A collapsed city is thus never empty. It is crowded with what once was. The absence becomes a stage where imagination performs, where every broken gate is a mouth, every hollow temple a throat, every gust of wind a sigh. The silence after crowds is a choir, endless and unseen, and so the first haunting of ruins is not of spirits but of memory. Cities are not abandoned, they are saturated. Their stones hold impressions of hands that built them. Their streets remember the press of sandals, their thresholds recall the touch of countless feet. To walk there is to walk through an archive of presence, though the pages are blank. We feel them because we expect them, because we know they once were. Silence is not emptiness, it is history inverted, presence turned inside out. And in that inversion lies the ghostly power of ruins. Thus, Part 1 closes with a simple truth. The haunting begins not with phantoms, but with absence. The silence after crowds is louder than any voice. It presses against us, reminding us that what was once alive is gone, and yet not gone. It lingers in memory, in imagination, in the stones themselves. To stand in a collapsed city is to stand between presence and absence, life and silence, echo and void. And in that threshold, the ghost story begins. To enter a city after its life has ended is to walk into a hollow. The streets remain, but they no longer lead anywhere. The stones once pressed flat by countless feet now gather dust and weeds. Arches lean like ribs of a carcass. Doorways gape like open mouths that will never speak again. Each corner feels familiar, though no one is there. The city, emptied of breath, becomes a body without pulse, structure intact, spirit gone. The traveler moves slowly. His steps echo too loudly, bouncing from wall to wall, as if the city exaggerates the sound to remind him he is intruder. The silence seems active, not passive. It pushes back against each movement, magnifying it, judging it. He pauses by a broken fountain. Once it spilled water for children and merchants, soldiers and priests. Now it is dry, its basin filled with dust. Yet standing before it, he swears he hears trickling, faint and ghostly. The ear fills silence with memory, and memory becomes presence. Ruins often feel inhabited, though they are empty. A collapsed theater still carries the shape of applause. A deserted forum still holds the murmur of debate. A temple stripped of idols still feels watched. These are hauntings not of spirits, but of impressions. The very spaces dictate how they should sound, how they should feel, and the absence only sharpens the sense of what is missing. The hollow street does not stay quiet, it insists on being remembered. In myth, abandoned cities were never truly empty. The Greeks spoke of Troy, where the shades of warriors wandered among shattered gates. The Hebrews told of Jericho, its fallen walls echoing still with the cries of trumpets. The Persians spoke of Persepolis, where conquerors salted the ground, yet voices rose when wind touched the ruins. Each story reveals the same truth. Absence demands a presence to fill it. The hollow street invents its own ghosts. Walking deeper into the city, the traveler finds houses open to the sky. Roofs collapsed, walls leaning, floors buried under stone. Yet the arrangement of rooms remains. Courtyards, hearths, sleeping chambers. Standing in their emptiness, he imagines families, women stirring pots, children playing, men returning from fields. The silence makes these memories vivid, more vivid than they ever were. The hollow house becomes stage, the absent crowd becomes actors, summoned not by sight, but by longing. Every ruin is a theater of memory. At night, the hollow streets grow heavier. Darkness magnifies silence, filling it with shapes the eye cannot verify. The traveler hears footsteps behind him, though none are there. He feels eyes from windows, long empty, gazes from doorways bricked with rubble. The mind rebels against nothingness. It insists on presence. This is why the hollow city becomes haunted, not because of phantoms, but because of imagination itself. Where there is void, we create. Where there is silence, we hear. Where there is absence, we see. The ancients often feared such places. They avoided ruins, calling them cursed. They believed that spirits clung to broken cities, that the dead were restless there. But perhaps what they feared was not spirits at all. Perhaps they feared silence itself, the confrontation with emptiness. For silence reflects mortality more keenly than speech. It shows us how easily life vanishes, how quickly voices dissolve. To walk a hollow street is to see our own future, the day when our voices too will be gone and our cities reduced to echoes. And yet there is beauty in this haunting. For silence does not destroy entirely. It preserves in its own way. Each hollow street carries memory, even if distorted. Each ruin speaks, even if faintly. The absence becomes archive, a negative image that allows us to imagine what was. The ghost of the city is not horror, but continuity. a reminder that nothing vanishes completely, that even in emptiness, traces endure. Thus, Part 2 closes with the image of hollow streets, silent yet filled with echoes, empty yet heavy with memory. To walk them is to walk between worlds, between what was and what is gone. The silence does not erase, it exaggerates, it invents, it preserves, and so the haunting grows deeper. Silence is not emptiness, it is appetite. In the hollow streets of collapsed cities, silence feeds. It devours the sound of voices that once filled the air, swallows laughter, consumes the rhythm of markets and festivals. It drinks deeply from absence until even memory begins to dissolve. Where once there was the hum of humanity, there is now a stillness so thick it presses against the chest. The silence is not passive, it is alive, a predator that waits in the ruins, feeding on what time has abandoned. The traveler walking deeper into the city feels it more keenly now. The silence seems to follow him, clinging to his clothes, pressing at his ears. He stops and listens, but there is nothing. No bird, no insect, no rustle of leaves, only stillness. And yet it feels crowded, as if a multitude hides just beyond the edge of hearing. The silence is not empty. It is swollen with what it has consumed. It is heavy with the weight of voices that no longer are. In ancient tales, silence itself was feared as a force. The Romans spoke of Silentia as a goddess, a presence that accompanied rituals of the dead. The Greeks invoked Hesychia, the quiet that followed destruction. In Near Eastern myth, silence was the void before creation, the darkness that swallowed empires. These stories reveal an old intuition. Silence is not nothing, it is power. It waits at the edge of collapse, and when cities fall, it rushes in to claim what remains. Consider how silence transforms a place. A temple without chanting becomes oppressive. A market without bargaining feels haunted. A home without voices becomes tomb. The same walls that once sheltered life now amplify loss. The silence creeps through them like mist, filling every corner. In this way, silence becomes the city's final inhabitant, its last ruler, its eternal ghost. It outlasts kings and crowds, feeding endlessly on their absence. The hunger of silence is most visible at dusk. As shadows lengthen, the traveler senses how silence deepens with the dark. It grows restless, pulling at the edges of imagination. He thinks he hears a cough, a sigh, a whispered name, but when he turns, there is nothing. The silence has consumed the sound, leaving only its ghost. Hunger is never satisfied. It creates echoes where there are none, impressions of presence that dissolve upon touch. The city feels alive because silence has feasted on its memory and wears it as disguise. This is why ghost stories cling to ruins. Not because spirits linger, but because silence demands interpretation. Minds cannot accept void, they must fill it. And so the silence becomes voice, becomes figure, becomes story. We say we hear soldiers marching still, or priests chanting in the dark, or children playing where no children are. But what we truly hear is silence itself, fed fat on absence, now pressing outward in echoes. The haunting is not beyond us, it is within us, summoned by silence's hunger. And yet, silence is not only predator, it is also preserver. In consuming noise, it protects memory. It keeps impressions intact, unchanging. The laughter it devours does not vanish. It lingers as echo, faint but eternal. The chants it swallows still vibrate in imagination, even centuries later. Silence holds what it takes, storing it in invisible vaults. It is both destroyer and guardian, both devourer and archivist. The hunger of silence is paradox. It erases, yet it preserves, feeding on absence while carrying fragments forward. The traveler pauses in the city square. Once it was heart of life, processions, debates, celebrations, executions. Now only broken columns rise and weeds push through paving stones. Yet he feels it thrumming still, as if silence itself has taken the place of the crowd. He hears echoes not in his ears but in his bones, vibrations of memory carried by stillness. The hunger of silence has devoured the city's noise, but in doing so, it has preserved its shape. The square is still alive, though its life is ghostly, translated into silence. Thus, part 3 closes with this reflection. Silence is not void, but appetite. It feeds on absence, grows heavy with memory, and presses against the living. It devours yet preserves, destroys yet sustains. In collapsed cities, silence is the last inhabitant, the eternal ghost that cannot be banished. To walk among ruins is to feel its hunger, to hear its echoes, to sense its weight. The haunting deepens, not from spirits, but from silence itself. Ruins do not forget. Though their voices are gone, their stones remember. Every block, every column, every stair holds the impression of lives that once pressed against them. The worn threshold recalls the weight of countless feet. The carved pillar remembers the craftsman's hand. Even shattered tiles whisper of the colors they once held, glowing in sunlight long extinguished. The city, though collapsed, becomes archive. It does not speak in sentences, but in fragments, in gestures, in the language of endurance. The traveler lingers in an abandoned courtyard. Ivy spills over cracked walls, and a tree grows where once a fountain stood. Yet he senses the memory of gatherings, families seated beneath shade, children chasing each other, elders speaking of distant wars. The stones seem to replay these impressions, not as clear vision, but as suggestion. He feels them in the air, faint as perfume, sharp as longing. The city remembers, even if imperfectly. It carries not stories whole, but their shadows. Ancient myths often gave memory to place. The Greeks spoke of Mnemosyne, goddess of remembrance, whose river divided forgetfulness from truth. To drink of her waters was to recall all that had been, to be haunted by it. Collapsed cities are her river-made stone. To walk through them is to drink of memory, to be filled with impressions one did not live. We are haunted not only by what we remember, but by what the city remembers for us. Ruins become extensions of Mnemosyne's gift, repositories of recollection carved in silence. The memory of cities often outlives the memory of names. Kings who built palaces vanish from history, but the palace itself persists, holding memory in its stones. Citizens who filled the markets are forgotten, but the marketplace recalls their presence. The collapse of life does not collapse memory entirely. The city itself becomes witness, silent yet enduring, storing fragments that no fire or sea can fully erase. To call ruins haunted is to recognize their power to remember what mortals forget. But memory is fragile. The city does not preserve perfectly. It carries distortions, gaps, silences. The traveler senses this as he wanders deeper. Some rooms remember nothing, empty shells without echo. Some corridors confuse impressions, shadows layered upon shadows, too faint to distinguish. Memory clings unevenly, leaving the city fractured, like a book half-burned. Yet even in incompleteness, the ruins hold more than absence. They remind us that memory is never total, but fragments suffice. The city that remembers does so imperfectly, yet even imperfection is gift. At night, the city's memory awakens most strongly. The silence of stars presses against its walls, and the stones seem to hum with recollection. The traveler feels surrounded, as if the city itself is alive, breathing through its ruins, pulsing with echoes. He no longer imagines specific voices. Instead, he feels the presence of memory itself, a great reservoir in which all lives once poured. The city has become a body, and its silence is its breath. It is haunted not by ghosts, but by its own remembrance. This remembrance is not only of triumph, but of ruin. The city recalls its collapse as vividly as its festivals. The traveler feels it in the broken gates, the scorched stones, the toppled statues. These are scars, and scars remember pain. To walk among them is to feel the weight of destruction, the grief of downfall. Yet even grief is memory. The city remembers its own death, and in that remembrance, it continues to live. For what collapses yet recalls is never truly gone. So the city that remembers is paradox. It is dead, yet alive with memory. It is silent, yet heavy with echoes. It is absence, yet full of presence. Its haunting is not terror, but testimony. To stand in its streets is to stand within memory itself, to feel history pressing through stone, to hear silence shaped into remembrance. The city that remembers does not vanish. It lingers, patient, eternal, carrying within itself the traces of all it has seen. Thus, Part 4 closes with stillness. The traveler departs the ruins, but the city remains behind, remembering. Its stones continue to hold their silent echoes, its courtyards their faint impressions, its streets their invisible crowds. The city is no longer alive, but it is not empty. It remembers, and in that remembrance it endures. Cities are made of stone, but stone is not mute. Every wall, every block, every carved surface absorbs sound, touch, and story. A wall that has stood for centuries has listened longer than any priest, has observed more than any soldier, has borne witness more faithfully than any scribe. Though speech fades, though breath dissolves, the wall remembers. Its silence is not emptiness, but archive, a library without ink. To place one's hand upon ancient stone is to touch memory itself, to feel the weight of centuries pressing through its surface. The traveler moves through a ruined avenue lined with broken columns. The walls that rise beside him are cracked, their plaster peeled, their carvings eroded by wind and rain. Yet as his hand brushes their surface, he feels impressions, not physical carvings, but sensations. He imagines voices once reflected here, conversations bouncing against stone, arguments echoing through courtyards. He hears not with ears, but with mind. The wall has remembered, and in touching it he remembers too. In myth, walls were never inert. Jericho's walls collapsed at the blast of trumpets, proving that stone could hear. Troy's walls, built by gods, carried the echo of divinity. Babylon's gates were said to trap voices, holding them for generations. Across cultures, walls were seen as more than boundaries. They were listeners, absorbers of life, vessels of memory. To live within walls was to be preserved, to be inscribed not only on scrolls, but upon stone itself. When a city falls, its people vanish, but its walls remain. These walls are not silent, they speak, though faintly. Their cracks are syllables, their shadows sentences, their scars paragraphs of memory. To read them is to practice archaeology of the invisible, to listen with patience, to sense history in texture and weight. Scholars dig for artifacts, but the traveler who lingers in ruins digs differently. He listens to walls, and in their silence, he hears what crowds forgot. So Part 1 closes with reverence. The walls that remember are not merely stone, they are witnesses. They have absorbed lives, stored voices, preserved impressions. Their silence is archive, their endurance testimony. To touch them is to touch memory itself, carved not in words, but in presence. The haunting of cities begins not with ghosts, but with walls that refuse to forget. Walls do not choose what they remember. They absorb everything: the joy of festivals, the murmur of markets, the hymns of temples, but also the screams of collapse, the clash of armies, the weeping of the dying. They carry memory indiscriminately, and in that accumulation lies their burden. A wall is both archive and scar, preserving not only life but its undoing. When cities fall, the walls remain as witnesses, unable to forget what they have seen. The traveler pauses before a gate shattered by conquest. Its stones are cracked, blackened by fire, scarred with deep gouges where blades struck. To him it looks less like architecture than bone shattered in violence, yet the wall still stands, holding the memory of that day. It remembers the thunder of siege engines, the roar of invaders, the cries of defenders cut down. Though centuries have passed, the silence is not empty. It is thick with what the wall once absorbed. To look upon it is to sense the weight of memory too heavy to vanish. Ancient stories spoke often of walls that bore trauma. In the Book of Lamentations, Jerusalem's walls are described as mourning, shedding tears for the people who once walked beside them. In Roman history, the ruins of Carthage were said to groan when winds struck them, as if the city itself remembered its destruction. The myths were metaphors, but they carried truth. Walls endure what humans cannot. When memory overwhelms the living, it lingers in stone. This burden gives ruins their haunting power. It is not only absence that unsettles, but the presence of pain preserved. The traveler senses it when he enters a collapsed house. The walls lean inward as if in grief. The silence feels raw, wounded, alive with what it once contained. He imagines arguments unfinished, lives interrupted, a family torn from its hearth. The walls are not merely abandoned, they are stained with memory, unable to release what they have endured. In this way, ruins resemble survivors. Just as humans carry scars of war and famine, so too do walls. Their cracks are wounds, their collapse a limp, their silence a grief. To walk among them is to walk among survivors who cannot speak, yet who never cease to testify. The city may be dead, but its walls are alive with remembrance, pressing their stories upon those who pass. They remind us that places carry trauma as deeply as people, that architecture itself becomes memory. The burden of witness is double-edged. It preserves, but it also haunts. For to touch a wall is to risk inheriting its memory, to feel the echo of screams it has stored, to sense sorrow too deep for words. Travelers and archaeologists alike often speak of unease in ruins, a heaviness that lingers without explanation. Perhaps this is why. The walls remember what we would rather forget, and in their presence we are compelled to listen. So part 2 closes with this truth. Walls do not erase, they endure. They carry the weight of lives and of deaths, of joy and of grief. Their silence is not neutrality, it is testimony. To stand among them is to stand among witnesses, guardians of memory who cannot speak yet never forget. This is their burden, and it is why collapsed cities feel haunted. Silence is never absolute in ruins. When the traveler lingers long enough, he begins to hear something subtle, softer than wind, lighter than dust. It is not a sound, but the impression of one carried in the imagination. The walls seem to murmur. Their cracks form lines like lips half-parted. Their shadows tremble as if words stir within them. The traveler cannot understand what they say, but he feels the pull of their whisper, an invitation to listen more closely, to lean inward, to let memory speak through stone. Ancient peoples believed that walls could indeed speak. Oracles at Delphi were consulted beside stone fissures, where whispers rose like breath from the earth. The Celts carved faces into stone, believing voices lingered within. In Egypt, hieroglyphs were not merely marks, but utterances preserved, eternal speech carved into enduring walls. Even when no words are written, the stones themselves seem to remember the cadence of language, replaying fragments in the ear of those who pause to listen. The traveler wanders into a temple. Its roof is gone, its columns broken, but the walls remain, leaning inward like listeners themselves. He stands in the center, and for a moment he thinks he hears chanting, low, rhythmic, rising and falling like waves. He closes his eyes, and the murmur strengthens, echoing against the silence. It is not real, not audible in any true sense, but it is there nonetheless. The walls replay the memory of prayers once sung, voices layered upon voices until silence became saturated with sound. The murmur of stone is not always gentle. In some places it carries the weight of conflict. In a ruined gatehouse, the traveler feels the echo of commands shouted, of soldiers clashing, of the cries of defeat. The sound is gone, but the impression lingers, pressed into the walls like fossils of noise. He shivers, for though he knows he is alone, the air feels crowded. The murmur rises not in words but in pressure, the weight of countless voices still present in absence. This is why ruins feel alive. They are saturated with murmurs. Every courtyard holds laughter half heard. Every street carries footsteps that never quite fade. The imagination is not inventing from nothing. It is responding to impressions preserved in stone. We do not hear walls because we are fanciful, but because they have absorbed so much that silence itself feels charged. Memory cannot remain mute forever. It hums through cracks, it vibrates through shadows, it presses against us like breath. In mythology, this murmur was often personified. The Greeks spoke of echo, cursed to repeat the voices of others. Her story lingers in walls, for they too repeat without origin, carrying fragments of voices long dissolved. In Roman tales, the genius loci, the spirit of place, was thought to dwell in every corner, whispering its presence to those who entered. Even in modern folklore, ruined castles and abandoned cities are said to whisper to travelers, not as clear voices but as impressions of memory too heavy to remain silent. The traveler lingers in the ruins until nightfall. As darkness settles, the murmurs deepen, the stones cool, and their silence grows more resonant, as if night itself draws out their voices. He feels surrounded, not by ghosts of flesh, but by memory embodied in matter. The murmur does not frighten him. It soothes like a lullaby carried across centuries. He realizes that the city is not dead, but dreaming, and the murmurs are its sleep talk, fragments of life replayed as the ruins rest beneath the stars. So part 3 closes with this image, the murmur of stone, faint but enduring, a whisper that blurs silence and presence. It is not sound, but memory, carried by walls that refuse to be mute. To hear it is to hear the persistence of life itself, echoing even in collapse. And in this murmur the city assures us, it remembers still. Every ruin is a witness. The walls that stand, fractured but unbroken, testify to what once was. They do not shout, they do not sing. They speak in silence, in scars, in their sheer endurance. Their testimony is not a story told from beginning to end, but fragments repeated endlessly. Here, a fire burned. Here, a blade struck. Here, a voice echoed. The ruins cannot forget, and so they remain as monuments to memory, even when memory itself has no words. The traveler stands before the remains of a great hall. Its roof is gone, its pillars collapsed, yet the walls still rise like solemn faces turned toward the sky. He feels their weight pressing on him, as if they are calling him to bear witness too. He realizes that ruins do not only remember, they demand remembrance. To walk among them is to be conscripted into their testimony, to become a vessel carrying their silent message forward. The haunting is not theirs alone, it becomes ours. In ancient traditions, testimony was sacred. The Hebrews placed tablets of law within the ark, naming them the testimony. The Greeks saw walls themselves as oaths. Troy's walls, built by Apollo and Poseidon, bore divine witness to the city's destiny. Even in Rome, ruins of earlier cities were left standing, not erased, as if to declare, "This happened, do not forget." The walls that remain are not accidents of survival. They are charges, reminders, burdens laid upon the future. But testimony is heavy. To feel it is to sense the weight of lives pressed into stone, tragedies embedded in cracks, triumphs etched into carvings. The traveler feels this heaviness as he runs his hand across a wall blackened by ancient fire. It does not tell him the details, who set the blaze, who perished, who survived, but it tells him enough. It says, "Something happened here. Do not pass in ignorance. Remember, even if you cannot know, this is the voice of ruins, not precise, but insistent. And yet testimony is not only sorrow. Some walls carry joy, murals faded, but still visible recall festivals. Carvings of gods and heroes preserve devotion. Inscriptions half-worn tell of marriages, victories, offerings. Even laughter, though long dissolved, seems to echo faintly where walls once amplified it. The ruins testify not only to endings, but to lives once lived fully. They remind us that collapse is not the whole story, that before silence there was music, before ruin there was radiance. Their testimony is of both death and life woven inseparably together. At night, the traveler rests against one such wall. Stars scatter above, their cold light touching the cracks and shadows. He feels the wall at his back like the shoulder of an ancient companion, watching, remembering, enduring. He drifts towards sleep, and in that threshold state he imagines the wall speaking, not in words, but in presence. It says, "We remain because memory must remain. We endure because forgetting is too easy. We are the city's last voices, speaking not in sound, but in stone." Thus, the testimony of ruins is twofold. They remember for themselves, and they remember for us. They carry what no parchment could preserve, what no scribe could record. The raw presence of existence, the density of lives compressed into place. And in their silence, they summon us to listen. To ignore them is to break the chain of memory, to abandon the testimony that only they can bear. So part 4 closes with stillness, but not emptiness. The walls stand, fractured but eloquent, their silence filled with memory. They are not merely remnants of collapse, they are witnesses, guardians, voices of stone. To walk away from them is to carry their testimony within, to bear fragments of their memory onward. And in this way, ruins never cease to speak. When a city falls, its temples stand longest. Palaces may crumble, markets may vanish, but temples cling to the earth, as if rooted in eternity. Their columns rise even in ruin. Their sanctuaries echo even when the priests are dust. The gods once worshipped there may be forgotten, their names erased from tongues, but their breath lingers in the air like smoke long after the fire has died. To enter an abandoned temple is to step into a silence that does not feel empty but watchful. The traveler approaches such a temple at dusk. Its roof has collapsed, its statues are broken, its altars cracked. Yet the shape of reverence remains. The long approach, the high steps, the doorway framed like a mouth awaiting prayer. As he enters, he feels the air change. The silence is thick, not hollow, it has density, as if a presence hovers still. He cannot name it, for the god is forgotten, but he feels its breath in the shadows. Ancient peoples believed temples absorbed divinity. Once consecrated, they were no longer stone but body. The Greeks saw temples as the dwelling of gods themselves, their columns ribs, their chambers hearts. The Egyptians built sanctuaries where only priests could enter, convinced the god resided within. Even when rituals ceased, the architecture retained sanctity. To tear down a temple was to offend the divine, for the god remained long after believers vanished. Forgotten gods do not die easily. They linger in walls and air in silence that feels alive. The traveler pauses before a toppled idol. Its face is shattered, its name unknown, but its presence is undeniable. He feels observed, as if eyes still linger where stone sockets remain. He remembers stories of ancient curses, of gods punishing those who desecrate their sanctuaries. Perhaps these tales were not superstition but intuition, an acknowledgement that belief does not vanish with believers. It lingers, pressing through stone, breathing through absence. Temples are lungs that inhale prayers and exhale memory long after the city is gone. Even in myth, forgotten gods breathe still. The Titans, chained beneath the earth, were said to stir mountains with their sighs. Fallen Baal was believed to rumble in storms, long after his worship ended. Forgotten deities linger as shadows, not erased but transformed into whispers of natural force. Their temples become haunted not by spirits, but by their own divine residue, refusing erasure. To stand in them is to sense eternity's breath moving faintly through mortal ruin. So part 1 closes with reverence. Empty temples are never truly empty. They carry the breath of forgotten gods, subtle but undeniable, a haunting presence that refuses silence. To walk among them is to feel belief itself enduring, even when believers are dust. Sacrifice was once the heartbeat of temples. Fires lit at dawn, incense spiraling upward, the scent of burned offerings thick in the air. Priests lifted bowls of grain, skins of wine, flesh of animals, their gestures choreographed as bridges between mortal and divine. The smoke carried prayers, each curl a petition, each ember a plea. And though the fires have long since cooled, the memory of sacrifice lingers like ash. In abandoned temples, silence itself seems scented with offerings, as though the gods still inhale what mortals once gave. The traveler walks across a cracked floor darkened by centuries of soot. He kneels and runs his hand over the stone, still black with fire that has not burned in 1,000 years. He imagines the heat, the crackling wood, the hiss of fat, the chanting of priests. Though the flames are gone, the residue remains, absorbed into walls, into air, into memory. He feels faint warmth where there is none, a ghost of fire smoldering beneath the silence. Ancient texts spoke often of sacrifice as eternal. The Vedas described offerings as feeding the gods, who in turn sustained the cosmos. Greek rituals were believed to echo forever, the smoke binding heaven and earth even after the fire was extinguished. In Egypt, temple reliefs carved scenes of endless sacrifice, as if to ensure the rite never ceased. When the cities collapsed, the gods may have been forgotten, but the smoke of sacrifice lingered in stone. It is this ghost the traveler senses now, not spirits of men, but the persistence of ritual itself. He imagines the last sacrifice before the city fell. Perhaps the priests stood trembling as invaders breached the gates. Perhaps they lit one final fire, whispering prayers to gods who seemed silent. The smoke curled upward, fragile, desperate, uncertain if it would be received. And then the voices ceased, the fires died, the altars cracked. Yet the final smoke in some way remained, absorbed into walls, into silence, into memory, that cannot vanish. The traveler rises and looks to the altar, now broken in two. He feels the weight of thousands of offerings once placed upon it. Grain, wine, oil, blood, all poured as gifts, all consumed in flame. He senses the repetition, the daily rhythm of sacrifice now replaced by silence. Yet the silence is not empty, it is heavy, as if layered with countless prayers still circling in the air. Sacrifice does not end. It lingers as ghost, as echo, as breath of forgotten gods. This is why abandoned temples feel alive. They are saturated with ritual, soaked in the memory of offering. Even without priests, they hum with presence. To enter them is to disturb a silence that resists erasure, to walk through smoke that never fully dissipated. The gods may be forgotten, but the rhythm of devotion breathes on, embedded in stone. Sacrifice was always meant to transcend, and in ruins it does. It transcends time itself, haunting long after belief has died. So part 2 closes with solemn recognition. The smoke of sacrifice never vanishes. It clings to the walls, lingers in the silence, breathes through ruins. To stand in abandoned temples is to inhale memory, to sense offerings still rising, prayers still whispered, devotion still alive in absence. The haunting is not ghostly figures but rituals that refuse to fade. Gods are not so easily silenced. Empires may collapse, languages may dissolve, worshippers may vanish into dust, but the divine endures in echoes. A name forgotten by tongues may still vibrate in stone. A statue toppled may still radiate presence. Belief does not vanish. It transforms, shifting from ritual into atmosphere, from prayer into haunting. In the ruins of cities, one feels this persistence most strongly. The gods, though abandoned, linger. They breathe through silence, refusing to die. The traveler pauses before a headless statue. Its form is eroded, its face destroyed, but its posture retains authority. Though its name is lost, he feels reverence rising unbidden, as though the figure demands it still. The absence of a face only sharpens the impression. The god is faceless because it is eternal, unbound by human features. Forgotten by history, yet undeniable in presence, it radiates power like heat from cooled stone. The traveler bows without meaning to. Myths are filled with warnings that gods never die. The Titans, buried beneath mountains, were said to stir in earthquakes. Old Mesopotamian deities, long abandoned, were believed to whisper in dreams, their names resurfacing unbidden. In Norse sagas, gods destroyed at Ragnarok would return in cycles, refusing final silence. Even Christianity, rising over pagan ruins, absorbed old gods into saints, demons, and spirits, acknowledging their persistence. The gods transform, but they do not vanish. They become shadows, breaths, presences that haunt the ruins of their temples. The traveler moves deeper into the sanctuary, and the air thickens. He feels watched, not by men, not by memory, but by something larger. He cannot name it, yet he knows it is there. Forgotten gods breathe not in speech, but in sensation. Their presence is weight on the chest, chill on the skin, vibration in the silence. They do not announce themselves, they simply are. In ruins, this isness overwhelms, a reminder that divinity does not depend on worship. It persists even when no human voice recalls it. This is why ruins inspire awe as much as fear. We sense the gods who refuse to die. They are no longer sustained by offerings, yet their breath remains in stone, in silence, in the imagination of those who pass. The haunting is divine residue, belief that refuses erasure. Even skeptics, even wanderers who deny spirits feel unease in such places. The gods do not require belief to breathe. They simply endure, patient, eternal, waiting. In this persistence lies paradox. Forgotten gods are both absent and present, both dead and alive. They are ghosts of divinity, haunting without flesh, breathing without voice. To walk through their temples is to feel eternity brushing against mortality, presence against absence. The traveler realizes this truth as he steps back into the evening air. Gods cannot die because memory cannot die. Even when belief dissolves, the impression of the divine lingers, carved into stone, pressed into silence, breathing through ruins. So part 3 closes with reverence. The gods may be forgotten, their names erased, their worship ended, but their breath lingers still. They refuse final death. They haunt not as phantoms but as presences, as atmospheres, as whispers through stone. To stand in their temples is to feel them watching, breathing, enduring. The haunting of collapsed cities is divine as much as human, for the gods who once reigned within them refuse to vanish. Every city dies with a final voice. When walls collapse and people scatter, someone always remains for a moment longer. A priest whispering to a silent altar, a mother clutching a child beneath a crumbling arch, a soldier bleeding out on temple steps. Their voices, faint and desperate, are the last prayers of a dying city. These prayers may never reach the gods, but they sink into stone, into silence, into the very breath of ruins, and once whispered, they never vanish. The traveler imagines this moment as he walks through the shattered temple. He sees the altar, cracked in two, and envisions a priest kneeling there while the city burned. Perhaps the words were simple: protect us, remember us, let us endure. Perhaps the god was silent, or perhaps it breathed its answer in ways mortals could not hear. What remains is not certainty, but residue, a feeling that the last prayer lingers still, circling like smoke that refuses to dissipate. Myths tell of last prayers that echo forever. At Troy, as the city burned, women cried to Athena though her statue was dragged away. In Babylon, priests prayed to Marduk even as conquerors smashed his idols. In Jerusalem, voices rose from the temple before its destruction, pleading to a god who seemed hidden. These stories repeat across cultures because the pattern is universal. When cities die, their last act is always prayer. Even unbelievers whisper to silence, hoping it will answer. The traveler pauses in the temple's center. He closes his eyes and listens. He hears nothing, yet the absence feels charged, as if words hover just beyond hearing. He realizes the last prayer is not sound, but impression. It lives in the weight of the place, in the density of silence. The gods may no longer answer, but the city continues to pray through its ruins. Every broken wall, every toppled statue, every cracked altar is a petition carved into matter. Do not forget us. And perhaps the gods do not forget. Perhaps their breath remains because they heard. The presence that lingers in ruins may be their answer, not in words, but in endurance. The city collapsed, but the temple still stands. The worshippers are dust, but the walls remember. This endurance is itself a reply, not salvation but remembrance, not rescue, but presence. The gods who refuse to die also refuse to let prayers vanish. They carry them forward in silence, in breath, in haunting. The traveler leaves the temple at twilight. Behind him the ruins glow in fading light, their cracks deepening into shadow. He knows he has not heard voices, yet he feels accompanied, surrounded by memory, pressed by presence. The last prayer is still there, vibrating through stone, carried by silence, waiting for someone to listen. He realizes then that every visitor, every traveler, every wanderer is part of the answer. By remembering, by listening, by walking the ruins, they keep the prayer alive. So part of 4 closes with solemnity. The gods may be forgotten, but their temples breathe still. The people may be dust, but their last prayers echo. The city may be collapsed, but its ruins continue to whisper. The haunting of forgotten gods is not terror, but testimony. That belief endures, that prayers linger, that silence itself can hold memory. Dust is the quietest conqueror. It does not storm walls like armies, nor burn cities like fire. It waits patient and unrelenting. Grain by grain, it settles upon roofs, seeps into cracks, gathers in corners. Over centuries, dust becomes blanket, then shroud, then tomb. Entire cities disappear beneath it, not with violence but with silence. This is the hunger of dust. It consumes not by force but by persistence, feeding endlessly on the fragile skin of time. The traveler steps into a ruined street and sees dust everywhere. It carpets the floors of temples, softens the outlines of broken statues, clings to columns like a second skin. With each step his footprints disturb it, but only briefly. Already the air begins to resettle, filling his trail, erasing his presence. He realizes that dust is not merely covering the city, it is digesting it, drawing it back into earth. The ruins are not abandoned, they are being consumed. Ancient texts feared this fate. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Enkidu laments the house of dust where all must go, the land where crowns dissolve into powder. The Egyptians equated dust with death, returning the body to the desert. The Bible warned, "Dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return." Across cultures, dust was not debris but destiny. It was appetite embodied, the patient hunger that consumes kings and beggars alike, palaces and huts without distinction. The traveler brushes his hand against a wall and feels powder crumble beneath his touch. The stone is not solid but fragile, dissolving slowly into dust. He feels unease, for he realizes the city is still alive in its collapse. The dust is not aftermath, it is process. The city is being eaten as he walks, devoured grain by grain, consumed by an appetite without end. This is why ruins feel haunted, not only by memory but by dust itself, feasting endlessly on what remains. Yet dust is not only destroyer, it is also preserver. In burying, it protects. Scrolls hidden in caves survive because dust covered them. Mosaics endure because sand sealed them. Cities forgotten for centuries rise again when archaeologists brush dust away. The appetite consumes, but it also shelters. Dust is paradox, devourer and guardian, eraser and conservator. Its hunger is impartial, but within its burial lies preservation. The haunting of ruins is not only silence, but the patient breath of dust, covering, consuming, remembering. So part 1 closes with solemn truth. Dust is appetite, patient and endless. It consumes without rage, without haste, without mercy. To walk in ruins is to walk upon the banquet of dust, where memory is eaten grain by grain. And yet, in its hunger, dust preserves as much as it destroys, keeping fragments alive in the shroud of forgetting. Some cities do not fall to fire or sword. They are swallowed instead, slowly, silently, by the creeping advance of sand. Deserts are patient predators. Their dunes shift with the wind, advancing like waves that never retreat. A storm may bury a marketplace in a single night, but more often the hunger is gradual, grain by grain, wall by wall, street by street, until an entire city disappears beneath a golden sea. This is not collapse by violence, but by forgetting, by the appetite of dust stretched across centuries. The traveler imagines one such city, alive in its final days. Merchants call in the bazaar. Camels kneel beside wells. Children play at the edges of walls. Beyond them, dunes loom, their curves shifting under the sun. Each day they creep closer. Doors begin to fill with sand. Roofs sag beneath its weight. Wells choke with drifting grains. People flee, carrying what they can, leaving behind homes that vanish little by little, until only desert remains. The city becomes a mirage, visible only in memory. History preserves these swallowed cities. Ubar, the Atlantis of the sands, once thrived on incense trade before dunes consumed it. Hatra, ringed with temples, fell silent as desert winds piled dust against its walls. Even Egypt's great temples for centuries lay hidden beneath sand, their gods forgotten until rediscovered by weary travelers. These are not myths of ghosts, but of burial. The hunger of dust is not final destruction, it is concealment, a slow erasure that is also preservation. What sand buries, it also guards. The traveler kneels to scoop a handful of sand. It slips through his fingers effortlessly, yet its weight is undeniable. A single handful seems harmless, but multiplied by storms and centuries, it buries civilizations. The thought unsettles him. Dust does not rage, it does not hurry. Its hunger is indifferent, relentless, inevitable. It has no need to conquer with violence. It conquers with patience. And patience always wins. At night, the desert whispers more loudly than any ruin. Wind pushes dunes against stone, rattles grains like beads across abandoned thresholds. The traveler hears it as a chorus of whispers, as though the city itself is sighing beneath its burial. He realizes the haunting here is not of ghosts walking, but of voices muffled, pressed beneath sand. The dead do not rise. The living are smothered. The city is still there, breathing faintly, but its lungs are filled with dust. And yet, buried cities dream. When archaeologists dig, when sand is brushed away, Fragments re-emerge, painted walls still bright, vessels unbroken, inscriptions legible. Time collapses. The sand's appetite has preserved as much as it consumed. Forgotten gods rise again into sunlight, temples reopen to the sky, and the city breathes once more. Dust devours, but it does not annihilate. It waits. Its hunger is cyclical, consuming, concealing, revealing. So part 2 closes with paradox. The sand that buries also protects. Cities disappear, but they do not die. Beneath the dunes they sleep, their ghosts patient, their memory preserved in silence. The hunger of dust is endless, but within its appetite lies the possibility of resurrection. Not all dust drifts from deserts. Some is born of fire. When cities burn, stone crumbles, wood collapses, flesh dissolves into smoke. What remains falls as ash, fine as breath, grey as grief. This dust is heavier than sand. It carries with it memory of flame, the echo of screams, the residue of destruction. To walk through ruins where fire once raged is to breathe in fragments of what was lost. Ash lingers as ghost, clinging to walls, sinking into soil, becoming part of the air itself. The traveler steps into a chamber blackened with soot. His fingers brush across the surface of stone, leaving streaks of grey. He imagines the night it burned, the roar of fire devouring beams, the collapse of roofs, the cries of those who fled or failed to flee. All that life, transmuted into dust. The silence here is different from desert silence. It is sharper, darker, weighted with sorrow. This is not dust of patience, it is dust of violence, of sudden and merciless hunger. Ancient stories remembered such nights. Troy's burning became symbol of cities devoured by flame, its ash carried by winds across seas. Carthage, salted and burned, left smoke that haunted Rome's memory for centuries. Even smaller towns vanished in fire, remembered only through layers of ash uncovered later, preserving in tragic clarity the moment of their end. Pompeii, sealed in volcanic ash, carries faces, gestures, lives frozen at the instant of destruction. Dust here is not erasure, it is preservation in horror, a snapshot of mortality. The traveler kneels, sifting ash between his hands. It stains his skin, leaving him marked. He feels as though he touches memory itself, residue of lives condensed into dust. He realizes ash is paradox. It destroys, yet it preserves. It annihilates, yet it records. The hunger of fire consumes bodies, but in its aftermath, the ash holds their outlines, their gestures, their final cries. Ash is ghost in its purest form, matter reduced to breath, memory suspended in fragments too fine to see. At night, the traveler dreams of cities burning. He sees flames leaping against walls, shadows fleeing down streets, smoke coiling upward into blackened skies. Yet even as destruction unfolds, he senses another truth. The ash will remain. When the fire is gone, when silence returns, the dust will testify. It will cling to statues, seep into cracks, cover thresholds. It will say, this happened, this was real, do not forget. Ash is not only aftermath, it is memory insisting upon itself. This is why ruins covered in soot feel alive. They hum with residue, as though the fire still burns invisibly. Every step kicks up faint reminders. Every breath carries fragments of voices lost. The hunger of dust here is insatiable, for fire devours all. Yet in its hunger, it paradoxically preserves, capturing in ash what stone alone could not hold. Ash is cruel, but it is also archive, preserving not the whole story, but the last instant of life. So part 3 closes with this truth. Dust is not only sand, but ash. It is memory burned down to residue, life reduced to powder. It is hunger made visible, devouring and preserving all at once. To walk through ash is to walk through memory's shadow, to breathe in fragments of what was, to feel the ghostly persistence of lives ended in fire. All cities, however proud, return to dust. Their walls, once strong, crumble into powder. Their statues, once radiant, erode into formless grains. Even their stories, once sung, fade into whispers too faint to hear. Dust is the final inheritance of empire, the last crown placed upon every civilization. It waits patiently without hurry, knowing all things must bow to its hunger. Kings and peasants, palaces and huts, scrolls and songs, all dissolve into the same grey veil. This is the law of dust, impartial, inevitable, eternal. The traveler feels this truth as he leaves the ruined temple. Dust gathers in his sandals, coats his cloak, clings to his skin. He realizes he carries the city with him, reduced to grains. Each step spreads fragments of walls and lives into the air, scattering them across the earth. In this way, collapse is not final silence but dispersal. The city does not vanish, it becomes dust carried by wind, absorbed into soil, joining the endless cycle of decay and rebirth. Ancient traditions spoke of this return with reverence. The Hebrews declared, "For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return." The Hindus burned bodies to ash, scattering them into rivers so they might join eternity. The Greeks placed urns of ashes in tombs, believing dust carried the soul. To every culture, dust was not only end but transformation. It was not destruction alone, but passage. Matter shifting from form to formless, from city to soil, from life to silence. The traveler pauses on a dune overlooking the ruins. The wind rises, lifting clouds of dust into the air. He watches as the city itself seems to dissolve, its fragments carried away like smoke. He feels awe, not despair, for though the city is consumed, it does not vanish. It returns to the earth that bore it, to the soil that fed its fields, to the winds that carried its ships. Dust is not only hunger, it is return, reunion, reabsorption into eternity. And yet, there is sorrow too, for dust erases distinctions. Palaces become indistinguishable from hovels, marble from clay, names from anonymity. The dust that settles on ruins carries no memory of who built them, of who prayed, of who loved, of who died. It preserves fragments of form, but not of identity. This is the cruelty of dust. It equalizes without mercy, silencing voices into sameness. Its appetite devours not only matter but meaning. Still, meaning persists in us who remember. The traveler realizes that as long as someone listens, the dust does not erase completely. Memory is fragile, but it can resist. The haunting of ruins, the whispers of stone, the breath of forgotten gods, all are attempts to hold against the appetite of dust. We tell stories, we carve inscriptions, we walk among ruins so that dust does not win entirely. The hunger of dust is endless, but memory fights back. So part 4 closes with this truth. All returns to dust, yet dust is not annihilation. It is transformation, dispersal, reabsorption into eternity. Cities collapse, but their fragments live on, in the air, in the soil, in memory itself. To walk in ruins is to walk through dust that remembers. The haunting of cities is the hunger of dust, patient and eternal, consuming yet preserving, erasing yet carrying forward. Every city is built upon the dead. Long before walls rise, the earth beneath them is already filled with bones. Ancestors buried in shallow graves, warriors fallen in forgotten battles, children returned too soon to the soil. Builders do not always know it, but every stone laid presses against memory of flesh. Streets, no matter how bright, conceal darkness. Foundations are never clean, they are mortared with time, with death, with silence that has sunk deep into earth. The traveler enters a ruined street and feels it beneath his feet, the presence of bones. The stones are cracked, the dust unsettled, but beneath them lies another layer unseen. He imagines skeletons lying in rows, skulls turned upward, ribs broken and scattered. Some buried with rites, others simply abandoned in collapse. The city may have fallen, but the bones remain, patient, waiting beneath its streets. They are its truest citizens, permanent and unforgotten. Ancient peoples knew this truth. The Romans built necropolises outside their cities, vast fields of tombs through which travelers passed before reaching the living. The Egyptians placed entire cities of the dead beside those of the living, believing the two realms intertwined. In Mesopotamia, houses often included tombs beneath floors, where ancestors slept below the footsteps of their children. Death was not separate from life, it was its foundation. The bones beneath streets were reminders, guardians, and ghosts all at once. The traveler stops at the threshold of a ruined home. He pictures a family once gathered there, unaware, or perhaps keenly aware, that beneath them lay generations. Every meal eaten, every word spoken, every prayer uttered vibrated down into bones, pressing presence upon presence. The house was not only a dwelling of the living, but also of the dead. To collapse, it was to awaken both. Now, in silence, the bones breathe more loudly than voices ever did. In myths, bones often carried power. The Greeks told of heroes' relics, their bones capable of protecting cities if preserved within walls. The Hebrews carried Joseph's bones out of Egypt, refusing to leave him behind. The Norse spoke of bones glowing in darkness, guiding the lost. Bones were not seen as remnants, but as vessels of memory, sacred fragments of identity. Beneath streets, they were not merely corpses. They were presences, guardians who lingered beneath every step. The traveler kneels and presses his hand to the ground. He feels only dust, yet imagines a heartbeat beneath. The bones may be silent, but silence does not mean absence. They remain as structure, as foundation, as reminder that every city stands upon its dead. To walk here is to walk among graves disguised as streets, to tread upon history not only of stone but of flesh. The haunting begins not in walls or dust, but in bones waiting below, whispering through silence. So part 1 closes with reverence. Cities are not only built for the living, they are built upon the dead. Streets are bridges over graves, temples rise above bones, palaces are founded on silence. To remember this is to understand the truest haunting of cities, that beneath every step lie echoes of those who came before, bones that breathe without breath, foundations that will never vanish. When cities fall suddenly, by plague, by famine, by siege, the earth beneath them swells with the weight of the dead. Graves no longer dug carefully, no longer marked with names or offerings. Bodies laid hastily, piled upon each other, thrown into pits as survival demanded swiftness. These are the mass graves of collapse, earth transformed into crypt, streets resting upon sorrow too vast to number. Beneath the silence of ruins lies not emptiness but density, layer upon layer of restless sleep. The traveler descends into a collapsed courtyard where stone slabs have shifted, revealing hollows below. He imagines the scene long ago, wagons arriving, bodies carried in by the dozen, priests chanting quickly before moving to the next, mourners denied time for grief. He senses the urgency, the desperation. Death did not arrive gently. It arrived in waves, overwhelming ritual, overwhelming dignity. Now, centuries later, the earth itself exhales their presence. The silence here is heavier than elsewhere, for it is crowded with too many voices stilled at once. History holds countless such burials. In Athens, mass graves record plagues that emptied the city in weeks. In London, the Black Death filled pits where hundreds lay together, nameless and compressed. In Rome, famine drove bodies into trenches without offering or stone. And at Troy, after the flames, charred remains were left in heaps, the earth receiving them without care. These were not burials of reverence but of necessity, and necessity left sorrow behind. The bones of collapse carry not only death but indignity, and that indignity haunts. The traveler kneels by the hollow, pressing his hand against earth blackened with age. He feels a pulse, not of life, but of memory, compressed too tightly to rest. He imagines each body as a fragment of voice, each skull as a fragment of gaze. Together, they form a chorus that does not sing but hums, low and heavy in the silence of soil. The haunting of ruins is not only absence, it is overcrowding of memory, too many lives pressed into too little space. In myth, mass graves often gave rise to restless dead. The Greeks feared shades wandering battlefields, unburied and unappeased. The Hebrews told of valleys filled with bones awaiting resurrection. In Chinese tradition, places of mass death became sites of haunting, where spirits pressed against the living with hunger for recognition. These stories reflect an ancient truth. The dead who rest without dignity remain unsettled, and the earth itself remembers their unrest. The traveler rises and looks to the ruined street above. He realizes the city is more grave than settlement. Its stones are surface, its foundation is death. The people who once walked proudly above never knew, or perhaps they did, that their steps pressed upon the multitude below. In collapse, the boundary between living and dead thinned until it vanished. The city did not fall into silence alone. It fell into a grave too vast to name. So part 2 closes with heaviness. Mass graves are not only beneath the ruins, they are the ruins. The bones beneath streets are not few but countless, pressed together in restless sleep. They remind us that collapse is not abstraction, but density, not void, but compression of lives into silence. To walk among ruins is to walk upon pits filled with memory, with indignity, with haunting that does not fade. Not all bones beneath cities are restless. Many were placed there with reverence, carefully laid as guardians of the living above. For the ancients, the dead were not only gone, they were present, protectors dwelling beneath floors and streets. Each household carried its ancestors in silence, believing their bones lent strength to the walls, prosperity to the harvest, endurance to the city itself. Beneath footsteps, ancestors breathed, their presence woven into the rhythm of daily life. The traveler enters a half-buried home, its hearth long cold. He imagines the family who once lived here, their ancestors buried beneath the very floor where meals were shared. Children played above the bones of grandparents. Mothers whispered prayers to fathers resting just below. There was no fear in this closeness, only continuity. The bones beneath were not strangers but kin, ensuring that life above remained bound to memory below. Each step pressed gratitude into the soil. Archaeology confirms this intimacy. In Mesopotamia, skeletons were found tucked beneath rooms, cradled in jars beneath thresholds. In Rome, tombs lined the entrances of cities so that the living always passed the dead as they entered. In Egypt, mummies rested not far from villages, their decorated tombs constant companions. The city was never separate from its dead. It was built with them, around them, above them. Bones beneath streets were foundations not only of stone, but of family, lineage, and faith. The traveler feels this continuity as he walks the ruined street. Though collapse has emptied it, he senses it was once alive with ancestors breathing silently beneath. Each laugh, each quarrel, each prayer pressed downward, layering life upon memory. The haunting here is gentler than in mass graves. It is not sorrow but guardianship, not restlessness but presence. The bones do not reach upward in anger. They lie still, listening, carrying the weight of life with patience. Myths too preserve this vision. The Greeks spoke of oikoi, the household gods, often represented by relics of ancestors kept in shrines. The Chinese honored ancestors through daily offerings, believing their spirits lingered close. In African traditions, bones were sacred ties to lineage, the bridge between living and dead. Everywhere, bones beneath streets were reminders that life is never alone, that the past lives on not only in story, but in substance. The traveler kneels at a ruined threshold, brushing dust aside. He pictures feet passing there for generations, each one pressing against bones hidden just below. He feels comfort in the thought that no one was ever truly alone, that beneath every step lay family, memory, presence. Collapse may have silenced the city, but the guardianship of bones lingers. The ancestors beneath footsteps still listen, even if their names are forgotten. So part 3 closes with quiet reverence. Not all bones are restless. Some lie in peace, protecting the silence above. They are the truest foundation of cities, binding life to death, presence to absence, memory to daily breath. To walk among ruins is to walk upon ancestors who endure, guardians of memory beneath every stone. Bones are silence made visible. They lie mute in the earth, yet when unearthed, they speak with clarity no scroll can match. A skull tilted at an odd angle recalls a sudden death. A fracture across a rib tells of battle. Teeth worn down to the gums whisper of hard bread chewed in hunger. Even the smallest finger bone carries testimony. The dead may rest, but their remains are eloquent. They are the storytellers of collapse, their words etched not in ink but in marrow. The traveler wanders into an excavation where skeletons lie half exposed, their white forms gleaming against the soil. He kneels and gazes at one, ribs spread like a broken cage. He imagines the life it held, breath rising and falling, heart pounding with love, fear, struggle. Now only structure remains, yet the story persists. The bones declare, "I was here. I lived. I suffered. I endured." The city above is gone, but the bones below testify to its truth. Archaeologists become translators of these testimonies. In Pompeii, bones revealed citizens who died not of flame but of collapsing roofs. In Athens, mass graves told of plague, bones showing lesions etched into history by disease. In battlefields, skeletons preserved arrowheads still lodged in spines, frozen moments of violence that no chronicler could capture so honestly. Bones do not lie. They bear witness without embellishment, offering fragments of truth more enduring than legend. The traveler imagines the final collapse, streets crumbling, temples falling, fire consuming roofs. Amid chaos, bodies fell. Their breath ceased, but their testimony began. For centuries they waited, silent, until dust gave way and light returned. Now uncovered, they speak not in sound but in presence, pressing their story into the silence of the living. The haunting of ruins is not only walls and dust, but bones that rise from earth to remind us. Death is never mute. Myths gave voice to bones as well. In the Hebrew vision of Ezekiel, a valley of dry bones rose and spoke when called upon, rattling together with sound like thunder. In Greek myth, dragons' teeth planted in the ground sprouted warriors, bones transforming into living memory. Across cultures, bones were never only remains, they were instruments of voice, of resurrection, of continuity. Their silence was always potential speech. The traveler lingers by one skeleton, tracing its outline in dust. He feels humility or unease. These are not relics of strangers, but of kin, ancestors of humanity, fragments of the same story we all share. Their testimony is not theirs alone, it is ours, for their silence predicts our own. One day our bones will speak too, lying beneath streets not yet built, whispering stories to travelers not yet born. The haunting of ruins is not only their past, but our future. So part 4 closes with solemnity. The bones beneath streets are not mute. They speak, testifying to life, collapse, endurance. They are the final haunting of cities, the last voices of silence. To walk among them is to listen to the testimony of mortality, spoken not in words but in the enduring shape of bones. And in their speech, we hear both warning and remembrance, that all cities fall, that all lives end, but nothing vanishes without leaving trace. Every city carries the sound of footsteps. In life they are constant, sandals striking stone, carts rattling wheels, soldiers pacing walls, children chasing each other in play. The rhythm of movement is the rhythm of a city's pulse. When collapse comes, the voices vanish first, but the footsteps linger. They do not fade easily, for stone remembers impact, and silence exaggerates rhythm. Ruins are haunted not only by absence, but by echoes of endless marching, as though the city itself still walks. The traveler enters a long avenue lined with broken colonnades. His own steps strike sharply against cracked stones, and he hears them return from every side. The echo doubles, triples, multiplies, until he feels he is not alone. He slows, but the echoes continue, as though another set of feet follows just behind. He turns, no one. Yet the sound persists. It is not imagination alone. It is the memory of stone replaying centuries of passage, the resonance of lives compressed into silence. Ancient myth spoke of footsteps that outlasted death. Roman soldiers claimed to hear phantom marches in conquered cities, legions that refused to dissolve. The Greeks told of shades pacing battlefields, their steps sounding faintly on moonlit nights. In Norse sagas, fallen warriors marched eternally toward Valhalla, their boots echoing across the sky. These stories reflected what ruins already suggested. Movement lingers. The dead may fall, but their rhythm remains, imprinted upon earth itself. The traveler continues along the avenue, and the echoes deepen. Some sound hurried, as if merchants rushed to markets. Others are steady, measured, like guards pacing a watch. He realizes the city is alive, not in bodies, but in rhythms. The echoes carry no faces, no names, only motion. They are the city's memory of life, reduced to footsteps that never end. He feels surrounded, not by ghosts in form, but by movement itself, as if the city still breathes through its eternal march. This haunting is not frightening but mesmerizing. The rhythm soothes like a heartbeat beneath silence. It reassures him that life once filled these stones, that collapse is not erasure but transformation. The city is not gone. It is still walking, still pacing, still alive in echoes. To hear footsteps in ruins is to hear continuity, the persistence of presence beyond absence. The march never ends, for stone remembers every step. So part 1 closes with awe. The echo of footsteps is not illusion. It is memory resonating through silence. To walk through ruins is to walk not alone, but among rhythms that linger, movements that refuse to vanish. The haunting here is gentle, a reminder that life imprints itself upon the earth, and even in collapse the march continues. If streets carried the march of soldiers, marketplaces carried the murmur of countless feet, light and heavy, quick and slow, weaving endlessly between stalls. A market was not only noise of voices, but rhythm of steps. Children darting between tables, merchants pacing, animals tugging against ropes, buyers circling in hesitation before offering a coin. This ceaseless motion gave markets their pulse, their song of commerce. And though the stalls are long gone, their rhythm remains, echoing faintly across broken squares. The traveler enters the wide plaza of a ruined market. Columns lean like weary sentinels. Fragments of marble tables lie scattered across dust. Silence rests heavy, but when he steps forward, the ground replies with a texture of echoes unlike the avenue before. Here the sound is layered, quick taps of light feet, slower thuds of burdened steps, the shuffle of crowds turning in hesitation. He feels not alone but surrounded, immersed in a murmur of feet that no longer exist. He closes his eyes and the plaza stirs. He imagines sandals brushing across stone, the faint skid of wheels pulled by donkeys, the rustle of cloth as buyers leaned in to examine wares. The echoes fold into one another, indistinguishable, yet alive. This is not a soldier's march. This is the restless rhythm of exchange, the heartbeat of a city measured not in coin, but in footsteps. The silence exaggerates it, carrying absence as presence, making the market seem full, though centuries empty it. Ancient myths often tied commerce to haunting. The Greeks told of Hermes, god of markets and crossroads, who lingered where footsteps converged. The Romans honored Mercury, whose presence in plazas was said to remain long after stalls closed. Even in medieval lore, abandoned marketplaces were thought dangerous at night, filled with ghostly merchants still trading in shadows. Perhaps these tales arose because footsteps linger longer than words, imprinting rhythm into stone until it seems to walk on its own. The traveler moves slowly across the square, and the murmur follows. He turns corners, pauses by broken fountains, kneels beside toppled pillars. Everywhere the echoes press against him, softer here, heavier there, but always present. He realizes the market does not need stalls or sellers to exist. Its true memory is motion, and that memory endures in silence. The haunting here is not spectral merchants, but the rhythm of their feet, restless still, pacing forever across a square without buyers. At dusk, the plaza grows dreamlike. Shadows lengthen, and the traveler feels as though he walks inside a pattern too vast to see fully. The footsteps surround him, weaving past, brushing close, fading and returning. He does not fear them. He feels comfort in their persistence. They are proof that life was dense here, layered, abundant. The silence of ruins is never emptiness. It is full of footsteps that echo beyond time, preserving markets in rhythm when goods and voices have long vanished. So part 2 closes with calm recognition. Marketplaces are never silent, not truly. Their stones remember the murmur of countless feet, the restless weaving of buyers and sellers. To enter their ruins is to step into rhythm, to hear a haunting not of sorrow, but of continuity. The market's murmur endures long after the last stall has fallen. Of all footsteps, none linger so vividly as those of children. Their rhythm is lighter, quicker, filled with sudden bursts and abrupt halts. They do not march in order like soldiers, nor move with purpose like merchants. They scatter, weave, tumble, and return. Their steps carry laughter, and laughter leaves impressions even when voices dissolve. In ruins, one sometimes feels them still, the faint patter of bare feet darting through courtyards, the restless skipping of shadows that never grow old. The traveler enters a sunken courtyard, its flagstones cracked, its fountain dry. He pauses, for the silence here feels different. Softer, quicker, unsettled. As he walks, the echoes that answer his steps are not steady but playful. They multiply, darting ahead of him, circling behind, vanishing and returning in bursts. He stops abruptly, and for a moment the air seems to hold the patter of many feet, as if children have just fled around a corner, giggling beyond hearing. In myth, children often haunt more tenderly than adults. The Greeks told of spirits of young ones wandering meadows in the underworld, still at play. In Roman tradition, household lares were sometimes thought to include children who died too soon, remaining as guardians. Even in medieval folklore, ruined villages were said to echo with the laughter of children long gone, their innocence persisting where life had ended harshly. Perhaps this is why the lightest steps remain clearest, because they were never fully burdened by sorrow, never fully silenced. The traveler kneels at the edge of the fountain. He imagines children gathering here, tossing stones into water, chasing each other in circles, their voices rising into the walls. The fountain is cracked, the water gone, yet he feels the rhythm of play in the very stones. The silence has preserved their energy, replaying it faintly for anyone who listens. The haunting is not sorrowful. It is tender, almost joyful, as though the ruins remember youth as fiercely as they remember collapse. And yet, there is sadness too. For these echoes are of lives that ended, of children who never grew old. Their feet remain in rhythm, but their voices are dust. The traveler feels this paradox deeply, joy and grief interwoven, innocence and mortality bound together. To hear the children running is to hear life at its brightest and most fragile, preserved in silence like petals pressed into stone. As dusk deepens, the echoes grow gentler. They do not vanish. They soften as if the children retreat into shadow, preparing to return with morning light. The traveler feels comfort in this rhythm. He realizes that ruins do not preserve only grandeur and tragedy. They preserve play, laughter, innocence. Even in collapse, life was once abundant, once joyful, and that joy lingers still, faint but enduring. So Part 3 closes with quiet wonder. The echo of children running is the city's gentlest haunting. It is a reminder that beneath silence lies not only grief, but joy, joy too bright to vanish completely, footsteps too quick to be erased. The city remembers its children, and their running continues, forever light, forever free. Every ruin is more than fragments of stone. It is rhythm preserved. Soldiers marched, merchants wandered, children scattered, and though their bodies are gone, their footsteps linger. In silence, these rhythms merge, weaving into a single tapestry of motion. The city is not still. It is still walking. Its avenues hum with memory, its plazas pulse with echoes, its courtyards stir with faint vibrations. The haunting is not one of shadows, but of rhythm itself, continuing beyond collapse. The traveler moves slowly through the ruined streets at dusk. His footsteps strike stone, and the city replies, not with emptiness, but with layers. A heavy march seems to accompany him, steady and relentless. Lighter shuffles weave through, circling and vanishing. Quick, playful taps dart ahead like children fleeing into shadow. The city gathers all echoes into one sound, an endless movement that no silence can erase. He realizes he is not alone. He never was. The city itself is walking with him. Myths captured this persistence. The Romans spoke of lemures, restless shades pacing homes until appeased by ritual. The Greeks imagined heroes whose steps resounded eternally, bound to battlefields. In many traditions, ruins were avoided not because of visible ghosts, but because of the sound of invisible ones. Footsteps without form, movement without bodies. The ancients knew what the traveler now feels, that footsteps are harder to silence than voices. Sound dissolves, but rhythm endures, carried in stone. The traveler pauses at a crossroads. He closes his eyes and the echoes swell, converging from every direction. He hears armies, markets, children, priests, wanderers, all footsteps overlapping, indistinguishable yet alive. For a moment, the silence transforms into a crowd. and he feels the city breathing again. He understands then that haunting is not return of the dead, it is persistence of rhythm. The city's pulse has never stopped, it only changed form, reduced to echoes that endure within its bones. This realization brings both awe and humility, for if cities continue walking after collapse, then so do we. Our steps too will linger. Long after our voices are dust, the sound of our movement will remain imprinted in stone, in silence, in memory. We are never gone completely. The city remembers through rhythm, and so will the earth remember us. Every step we take is already a haunting in the making, a future echo that will outlast our breath. As night deepens, the traveler departs the ruins. Behind him, the echoes do not fade. They follow, faint but steady, stretching into darkness. The city is still walking, still pacing, still alive in rhythm. It does not matter that its walls are broken, its temples shattered, its people dust. Movement lingers. Presence endures. Silence is filled with echoes that refuse to vanish. The haunting of ruins is not sorrow alone, it is continuity, the proof that life persists even in collapse. So part 4 closes with this truth. The city never stops. Its footsteps, layered and endless, weave through silence, turning absence into rhythm, emptiness into presence. To walk among ruins is to walk with the city itself, alive in echoes, still moving toward eternity. The fall of a city is never only the fall of walls, it is the fall of kings. Palaces, once radiant with banners and music, become hollow shells where silence reigns. Thrones, once heavy with command, sit empty beneath broken roofs. The presence of rulers lingers, even when their names dissolve. Power is not easily buried. It seeps into stone, leaving shadows that outlast flesh. To walk through a ruined palace is to feel watched, not by ghosts of common folk, but by the invisible weight of kings who refuse to vanish. The traveler enters such a palace, its columns toppled, its mosaics fractured. At the far end, a cracked dais rises, the seat of power still visible, though stripped of ornament. He imagines the ruler who once sat there, crowned, robed, issuing commands that rippled across the city. The throne is empty, yet the air around it feels occupied. Silence presses heavily here, as though the authority of the past still breathes. The city may be fallen, but the shadow of kings endures. Myths often described rulers haunting their palaces. In Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar was said to walk his gardens after death, restless in pride. In Egypt, pharaohs were thought to linger in their monuments, refusing to surrender their power. In Rome, emperors appeared in dreams, their presence so strong it survived their bodies. Such tales reveal a truth. Kings, more than others, imprint themselves upon place. Their power saturates walls, their ambition stains stone, their collapse lingers as haunting. The traveler steps closer to the dais. He feels unease, as though he has intruded into a chamber not truly empty. He pictures the last day, the king fleeing or slain, the throne abandoned. Yet the seat still radiates command. It has absorbed centuries of power, too much to vanish with one collapse. Even broken, it demands acknowledgement. The haunting here is not of footsteps or whispers. It is of authority itself, lingering long after crowns are dust. This is why ruined palaces feel heavier than other ruins. They are not only structures, they are memories of command, monuments to ambition, vessels of power. Their silence is saturated, their absence charged. The traveler realizes he is not merely seeing broken walls. He is standing within the collapse of kings where shadows of power endure like smoke after fire. So part 1 closes with reverence and unease. Thrones in ruin are never empty. They carry the imprint of authority, the haunting of rulers whose power left shadows too deep to erase. To enter such spaces is to feel history pressing, as though the king himself still sits, watching, waiting. When kings fall, their palaces rarely crumble gently. Fire is their executioner. Flames sweep through painted halls, devouring banners, collapsing ceilings, blackening stone. Gold melts, wood vanishes, and walls once radiant with color are reduced to soot. Yet ash preserves memory, coating ruins with a residue too heavy to forget. To enter a burned palace is to step into the afterimage of power. authority dissolved into cinders, pride reduced to dust. The traveler stands in a hall blackened by flame. Charred beams stretch across the ground like bones, and the walls bear stains where fire licked upward. He imagines the night of destruction, soldiers storming, torches thrown, screams mixing with crackling flame. The king may have fled or fallen, but the palace burned regardless, its grandeur devoured in hours. And yet, even now, the air carries the ghost of heat. Ash clings to stone, whispering of fire that once consumed authority whole. History is filled with palaces undone by flame. The citadel of Troy collapsed in burning waves, its stones still dark when excavated millennia later. Persepolis, jewel of Persia, was set aflame by Alexander, its halls glowing red against the night sky. Even Rome, city of emperors, saw palaces consumed by fire, each time leaving behind ruins both tragic and strangely alive. Fire may destroy, but in its destruction it carves memory deeper, ensuring the fall of kings is never forgotten. The traveler kneels to touch the ash. It smears across his fingers, staining them black. He feels as though he has touched not soot, but shadow, the residue of command burned into silence. Thrones may vanish, rulers may be forgotten, but the ash remembers. It preserves the outlines of grandeur, the texture of collapse. It is the final garment kings wear, not silk, not gold, but soot that clings for centuries. In myth, fire is always purgation. The gods burned cities to cleanse pride, to humble rulers who claimed too much. The Hebrews told of Sodom consumed in flame. The Hindus spoke of Shiva, who destroys with fire to make way for renewal. Even in Norse sagas, Ragnarok ends in flame. The world devoured before being reborn. Palaces burning were seen not only as endings, but as judgments. Fire as divine hand striking down kings. The ash that lingers is not only ruin, but verdict. The traveler rises and looks across the hall. The silence is heavy yet not empty. He senses authority lingering, not as grandeur but as residue. The ash does not lie. It testifies. It says, "This was once great, now it is gone." Power is fragile, pride is flammable. The haunting here is sharper than footsteps or whispers. It is the presence of power undone, pride reduced to cinder. The collapse of kings is never only memory. It is ash breathed into the air, carried across centuries. So part 2 closes with solemn clarity. Palaces in ash do not vanish. They speak, preserved by fire's paradox of destruction and memory. To walk their ruins is to inhale the residue of authority, to feel kings breathing still through soot and silence. The haunting is not terror but testimony, that even thrones burn and even kings return to dust. Ambition does not vanish when a crown falls. It lingers like smoke, invisible yet suffocating. The stones of palaces absorb it, the ruins of thrones radiate it. Kings may die, dynasties may dissolve, but their hunger for power remains imprinted upon place. To walk among ruins is to walk within that hunger, to feel ambition pressing outward from broken walls. This is why palaces feel heavier than homes, why thrones in ruin feel occupied. The shadows of ambition are more enduring than the rulers themselves. The traveler pauses in a grand hall, its ceiling collapsed, its mosaics fractured. He feels the air thick, charged with presence. He imagines the king who once stood here, eyes burning with visions of conquest, hands restless upon maps of the world. That hunger does not dissolve. It saturates the space, staining silence. The hall may be broken, but it hums with ambition, restless still, whispering of victories dreamed but never won. History remembers rulers as much for their ambition as for their deeds. Alexander dreamed of endless empire. His cities still echo with that hunger. Caesar sought dominion over Rome, his shadow cast long beyond his death. Pharaohs raised monuments so vast, they pressed ambition into stone itself. When these cities collapse, they do not release that hunger, they preserve it. The ruins are restless because ambition refuses to lie still. It lingers as shadow, haunting without form, breathing without body. The traveler walks further and shadows lengthen. He feels them crowding, pressing against him from walls and corners. They are not phantoms of the dead. They are impressions of desire, echoes of power never satisfied. He realizes ambition itself is a ghost, unquiet and enduring. It lingers not in names but in atmosphere, saturating ruins like smoke trapped after fire. To feel it is to sense the hunger of kings, restless even in dust. Myths often warned of this persistence. The Greeks told of Tantalus forever reaching, forever unsatisfied. The Hebrews spoke of Nebuchadnezzar, humbled yet still remembered as restless dreamer of dominion. In Norse tales, Odin's hunger for wisdom endured even after doom was certain. These myths reflect a truth seen in ruins. Ambition is never buried. It survives collapse, haunting not as person but as force. The shadows of ambition are eternal, pacing through the silence of fallen palaces. At dusk, the traveler stops before a shattered throne. No figure sits upon it, yet he feels watched, commanded, judged. The throne radiates presence, not of a man, but of ambition itself. He realizes the haunting here is not ghost of king, but ghost of hunger. Ambition, once unleashed, cannot be recalled. It lingers, feeding on silence, echoing through centuries. The throne remains occupied, not by flesh, but by desire that refuses to die. So part 3 closes with unease. The shadows of ambition haunt more deeply than rulers themselves. They are the true legacy of kings, hunger pressed into stone, restless and unyielding. To walk among palaces is to feel this shadow, heavier than ash, louder than silence. The collapse of kings is never final, for ambition lingers, whispering endlessly in ruins. Every throne, no matter how gilded, ends in shadow. The seat of power, once radiant with jewels and guarded by armies, becomes hollow when its king falls. Yet the throne does not lose its weight. Even shattered, even abandoned, it carries presence. Authority, once seated there, stains the air. Ambition, once spoken from it, lingers like smoke. To enter a ruined hall is to find the throne still occupied, not by body, but by shadow. The traveler approaches one such throne. Its marble is cracked, its carvings eroded, but it still rises above the hall, raised upon steps that command reverence. He feels compelled to bow, though no king remains. The silence around it is thick, charged, alive. He realizes that thrones never truly empty. The seat remembers too much. The weight of command, the burden of crowns, the hunger of ambition. Even in collapse, the throne rules through presence alone. History confirms this persistence. The throne of Tutankhamun, though buried for millennia, radiated power when uncovered. The stone seat of Knossos, worn smooth, still compels reverence. Even the shattered remnants of imperial palaces in Rome draw awe, as though emperors linger in dust. Thrones are more than furniture. They are vessels of authority, carved to hold more than flesh. When the body is gone, the imprint remains, haunting long after collapse. The traveler lingers, and shadows gather. He feels them crowd the dais, not figures but impressions, ambitions unfinished, commands unspoken, victories never won. They press against him, heavy, invisible, undeniable. He realizes that the throne is haunted not by a single king, but by every ruler who ever sat, every ambition that ever rose, every collapse that ever followed. It is not throne of one city, but throne of all, a throne of shadows, eternal and unbroken. In myth, such thrones were feared. The Greeks warned of Hades' throne, where once seated no one could rise again. The Hebrews spoke of Solomon's throne, guarded by lions that watched beyond death. In Norse sagas, Odin's high seat allowed him to see all worlds, even after doom was decreed. Thrones were never simple. They were gates, vessels, altars. To sit was to bind oneself to power, and power, once invoked, never left. The throne of shadows is the summation of this truth. Authority never vanishes. It lingers as haunting. The traveler turns to leave, but the throne seems to follow him, its presence pressing even outside the hall. He realizes he carries it within him now, its shadow heavy in his memory. Thrones are contagious. Those who see them are burdened by their echo. The haunting of kings does not remain in ruins. It extends to all who remember. The collapse of kings is never final. The throne endures, seated in silence, occupied forever by shadows. So Part Dwarf closes with solemn recognition. Thrones, even broken, never empty. They carry the presence of rulers long gone, the shadows of ambition unquenched, the authority of centuries compressed into stone. To walk among them is to feel history's weight, pressing beyond collapse. The throne of shadows is eternal, reminding us that kings may die, cities may fall, but power always lingers, haunting forever in silence. Fire is the most fleeting of forces, yet its memory endures longer than stone. Flames leap, consume, vanish, but what they touch remains marked forever. Walls blackened, beams collapsed, soil charred deep beneath the surface. Cities fall by sword and famine, but it is fire that lingers most vividly in memory. Even when the last spark fades, ruins seem to smolder still, their silence heavy with heat that no longer burns. This is the paradox of flame. It vanishes quickly, yet it refuses to die. The traveler enters a city scarred by fire. Ash still stains the corners of walls, soot lingers in carvings, fragments of pottery are fused by heat. The air is cool, but he feels warmth in his imagination, as though the flames still flicker across broken roofs. He hears them too, the hiss of beams collapsing, the roar of walls catching, the cries that mingle with crackling. The city burned long ago, yet its presence is alive with fire that does not die. History remembers such nights with dread and awe. Troy's fall was recorded as fire rising so high it lit the sea. Carthage's burning was said to glow for days, ash carried into Rome's own streets. London's fire left scars so deep that even rebuilt walls could not erase them. In every story, flames became more than destruction. They became memory itself, shaping how collapse was recalled. The fire ended, but its echo endured, making ruins smolder centuries later. The traveler kneels beside a wall cracked and blackened. He runs his hand across its surface and feels soot crumble under his touch. It stains his fingers, light but insistent, a residue of heat carried across time. He realizes that this soot is more than ash, it is testimony. The fire speaks through it, reminding him that destruction is not absence but presence, preserved in residue. The flame itself is gone, yet its ghost lingers in every mark, every shadowed corner. In myth, eternal fire was a common vision. The Greeks tended the sacred flame of Hestia, never allowing it to die. Zoroastrians guarded fire temples, where flames burned continuously as symbols of creation itself. Even in destruction, fire was believed to persist. Gods striking cities with flames that never extinguished, punishing rulers through blazes that haunted long after. Perhaps such myths were born from ruins themselves, where soot and scars made it seem the fire had never truly ended. So Part 1 closes with quiet awe. Fire is fleeting, yet its presence endures, echoing in soot, ash, and memory. To walk through burned ruins is to feel heat in silence, to see flames in shadow, to realize that destruction, once unleashed, never vanishes. The fire does not die, it lingers, haunting forever. When armies wished not only to defeat but to erase, they set cities aflame. Fire was more than weapon, it was declaration. To burn a city was to proclaim that nothing within it should endure, not walls, not houses, not memory itself. Yet this act of erasure produced its opposite. Fire destroyed, but it also preserved its own presence, leaving ruins marked forever by the conqueror's flame. Cities that might have faded quietly into time became immortal through ash. Conquest ended, but the fire lingered. The traveler imagines such a night. Soldiers rushing through gates, torches in hand, the city alight with chaos. Flames consume rooftops, embers scatter like stars fallen to earth. Families flee, carrying little, shadows running against walls that glow red. The conquerors cheer, but even they feel unease. For fire, once released, obeys no master. It devours victor and vanquished alike, scorching earth with impartial hunger. Long after soldiers march away, the city burns, and long after it cools, the scars remain. History records countless such conflagrations. Alexander's army set Persepolis ablaze, its halls glowing against the Persian night, until stone cracked from heat. Julius Caesar burned Alexandria's docks, and flames leapt into its libraries, erasing voices of centuries. The Mongols turned cities to cinders, their fires visible for miles, their ash rising into foreign skies. Each act of conquest sought to erase, yet what remains in memory is not the victory, but the fire. The flames became immortal, outlasting generals, outlasting empires. The traveler stands in a plaza surrounded by blackened walls. He feels as though he can still hear the shouts of soldiers, the clash of conquest. Yet what dominates is not noise, but residue, the silence that fire left behind. The stones hum faintly with memory of heat, and soot lines their cracks like scars. He realizes conquest has ended, the army's gone, but the flames remain, etched permanently into silence. Fire has made its victory eternal. In myth, gods often punished through fire. The destruction of Sodom, the burning of Troy, the eternal flames of Tartarus, all reflected the sense that fire was divine judgment. When armies burned cities, they imitated gods, wielding flame as verdict. Yet, unlike divine punishment, conquest was mortal and temporary. The fire, however, outlasted both conqueror and conquered. It lingered as haunting, impartial, untethered from victory, preserving the night of destruction forever in soot and silence. The traveler kneels and touches a scorched column. It crumbles slightly beneath his hand, fragile, yet its blackened core remains stubborn. The city has fallen, yet the fire refuses to leave. He feels humbled, uneasy. Conquerors sought erasure, but what they created was endurance. Flame that does not die, memory branded into stone. The haunting here is not of rulers or victims, but of conquest itself, echoing eternally in scars. So part 2 closes with recognition. The flames of conquest are never past. They remain in ruins, breathing silently, whispering of nights when cities glowed like torches against the sky. Armies vanish, kings fall, but the fire endures, haunting beyond victory, beyond defeat. After fire, silence is heavier than before. Smoke fades, embers cool, yet the ruins breathe uneasily, as though the air itself remembers heat. Ash drifts across the ground in fine layers, soft as snow, yet each grain carries weight, the memory of what burned, the echo of voices silenced. This silence is not peace, it is aftermath. The quiet that follows screams, the stillness that holds the echo of flame. It is silence alive with residue, haunting long after fire has gone. The traveler enters a hall where ash still clings to walls. He kneels, running his fingers through the powder that gathers in corners. It stains him gray, delicate yet persistent. He imagines the lives it represents: tables consumed, scrolls devoured, beams turned to smoke. Each handful is archive, each smear a record of loss. The silence presses on him, heavy yet full. For within this stillness lies the density of all that fire erased. History knows this silence well. In Pompeii, the eruption left ash so thick it froze gestures in time, preserving final cries beneath its weight. In Herculaneum, scrolls turned black, yet survived as fragile whispers of knowledge. Even in cities like London or Lisbon, rebuilt after great fires, ash remained beneath foundations, silent testimony hidden under new walls. The world moves on, but the ashen silence endures, carrying within it the ghost of catastrophe. The traveler closes his eyes and breathes. He tastes dust in the air, faint bitterness that feels like smoke lingering centuries late. He realizes silence here is not absence, but presence. The fire is gone, but it left its breath behind. The city may no longer burn, yet the air hums faintly with memory of flame. The haunting is subtle but undeniable. The fire has ended, but it has not vanished. In myth, silence after fire was never empty. The Greeks spoke of Phlegethon, the river of flame in the underworld, which smoldered forever in silence. The Hebrews described desolate lands where smoke rose eternally as warning. In Zoroastrian vision, fire purified but never ceased, its silence as powerful as its blaze. Across cultures, the quiet after flame was seen not as void, but as continuation. a fire that lived invisibly in silence. The traveler stands in the plaza, soot swirling faintly in wind. He feels as if the city itself is exhaling, long after breath should have ended. The silence is thick, as though embers still glow unseen, as though the ruins remember their own burning with every shadow. He senses that fire never truly ends. It transforms into silence, carrying its memory forward as haunting. So part 3 closes with solemn truth. After flames die, ash remains and silence becomes their voice. This silence is never peace. It is residue, testimony, haunting. To walk through it is to feel the fire still burning invisibly, a presence that lingers in every breath of dust. Fire never ends in ruins. It waits. Ash may settle, soot may cool, but the memory of flame lingers like an ember hidden beneath grey dust. A spark, unseen, still glows in silence. It is not literal heat, but the sense that destruction is always ready to return. Cities that burned once seem always on the edge of burning again. Their ruins feel watchful, as though flame crouches invisibly in corners, biding its time. This is the final haunting of fire. Its persistence not only in past, but in potential. The traveler walks through a charred avenue at dusk. Shadows stretch long and the silence grows thick, but in the stillness he feels something coiled, like a presence waiting. He imagines flames returning suddenly, leaping from broken doorways, racing along the stones. The ruins seem prepared for it, as though expecting their own undoing to repeat. Fire haunts because it promises itself again. It is memory, but also prophecy. History teaches this cycle. Rome burned more than once, each fire carving scars into memory. London rose from ashes, only to fear flame forever. Even cities of modern age carry this unease, knowledge that fire, though tamed, is never conquered. The presence of soot is reminder that what has burned can always burn again. Ruins whisper this truth. Fire sleeps, but never dies. The traveler kneels by a hearth blackened centuries ago. Ash still lines the stone, fragile, faint, yet enduring. He touches it gently, and for a moment feels warmth, though no fire remains. He realizes the ember is not in stone, but in memory. Every visitor reignites it. Every whisper of ruins breathes on it. Fire waits in remembrance, fed not by wood, but by imagination. It will never be gone, because we keep it alive. In myth, fire was always cyclic. Prometheus stole flame once, but mankind must continually tend it. Shiva burns worlds only for them to rise again. Phoenixes die in fire and are reborn from ash. These stories reveal fire's truest nature. It is never final, never past. It collapses only to return. The ruins are haunted because they are not finished. They are kindling still, poised for another blaze, another memory. The traveler departs as night falls. Behind him the ruins darken, yet in his mind he sees them glowing again, lit by fire that waits. The silence is uneasy, heavy with presence. He knows the flames are not burning, but he feels them nonetheless. The city is both ruin and tinder, ash and ember, haunting not by what was, but by what could be. Fire never ends, it waits. So part 4 closes with this truth. The flame that destroyed is not gone. It lingers as ember, as memory, as potential. Ruins carry it always, silent but alive, ready to rise again. The fire that does not die is past, present and future, eternal haunting carved in soot and silence. Beneath every city water flows, rivers diverted, wells dug, aqueducts built. Civilization always bends itself around the need for water, yet when cities collapse the rivers do not vanish. They continue moving, carrying fragments of memory with them. Some flood the ruins, drowning temples and palaces. Others slip underground, whispering beneath broken streets. To walk among ruins is to feel the hidden current, the presence of water still moving beneath silence. It carries not only life but memory, an eternal haunting, an eternal. The traveler enters a ruined city by the sea. Waves lap against broken docks, and through cracks in stone he hears the faint rush of water below. The streets are dry, yet the sound of currents lingers, as though the city breathes through veins of water underground. He kneels, placing his ear against the stone, and hears it clearly. A faint murmur, steady, eternal. The city is collapsed, but its rivers endure, carrying whispers through the silence. History remembers cities swallowed by water. Helike in Greece, drowned overnight by earthquake and sea. Baiae in Italy, its villas now resting beneath waves, frescoes blurred by currents. Alexandria, its palaces and libraries partly claimed by the Mediterranean. These cities did not vanish entirely, they transformed into riverscapes, their ruins haunted by fish, their columns swayed by tides. Water, more than fire or dust, preserves while it devours. It hides cities, but keeps them intact, resting in silence beneath its shifting skin. The traveler walks through a colonnade where salt stains the stone. He imagines priests once pouring libations to gods of rivers and seas, prayers rising with smoke while water moved beneath their feet. Now those prayers are answered differently. The rivers themselves speak, carrying memory in liquid rhythm. The haunting here is not of shadows, but of murmurs, the eternal sound of water moving through ruins, reminding us that life continues even in collapse. In myth, rivers always carried memory. The Greeks spoke of Lethe, the river of forgetting, and Mnemosyne, the river of remembrance. Egyptians believed souls crossed the Nile in death. Mesopotamians saw the underworld as city of dust, yet threaded with dark waters. Everywhere rivers were boundaries, thresholds, carriers of memory. When they flowed beneath cities, they absorbed voices, carrying them endlessly forward. To hear water in ruins is to hear the persistence of memory disguised as murmur. So part 1 closes with reverence. The hidden current beneath ruins is not silence, it is memory flowing. Rivers outlast collapse, carrying fragments of cities in their endless rhythm. To walk among ruins is to listen closely, to place ear to stone, to hear water's eternal haunting. Water does not merely flow past ruins, it claims them. Temples once raised to gods of sun and sky now rest beneath waves, their columns swayed by tides, their altars veiled in silt. Where fire devours quickly, water consumes slowly, covering stone with patient layers of sand, coral, and silence. Yet within this drowning lies preservation. Statues stand upright in the dark. Mosaics glow faintly when touched by beams of light. Inscriptions remain legible though kissed by currents. These are the drowned temples, sanctuaries still intact yet unreachable, prayed within by silence itself. The traveler imagines such a temple beneath the sea. Fish circle broken pillars, their scales flashing where torches once burned. Anemones bloom from cracks in statues, their colors rivaling ancient paints. Shafts of sunlight pierce through shifting waters, illuminating altars now draped in seaweed. The gods once worshipped here are not gone. They have become part of the ocean, their presence mingled with tide and wave. The temple is not abandoned, it is transformed into cathedral of water. History offers many such sanctuaries. The city of Heracleion near Alexandria lay hidden beneath the Mediterranean for over 1,000 years. Divers uncovered colossal statues of gods lying upon the seabed, inscriptions still sharp, as though time had paused beneath the water's veil. Off India's coast, temples in Mahabalipuram rest beneath shifting sands of the sea. In Baiae, the Roman city of emperors, villas and shrines lie intact beneath the bay, their mosaics shimmering in silence. Each site proves the same truth. Drowning does not erase, it transfigures. The traveler pictures the last rites before the flood, priests lighting torches, chants rising, sacrifices laid upon altars, even as waters crept through doorways. Perhaps they believed the gods demanded it, that divinity itself was reclaiming the sanctuaries. Perhaps they prayed to stop the tide, but found themselves praying within it instead. The last hymns would not have ended. They would have been carried into the currents, echoing still beneath the waves. The haunting of drowned temples is not absence but continuation, devotion woven into water. In myth, water was always divine threshold. The Greeks prayed to Poseidon, whose temples often stood by the sea, vulnerable to its claim. The Mesopotamians saw Apsu, the primordial waters, as source of creation itself. The Hebrews described floods as judgment, reshaping the world. Across cultures, the gods of water were never gentle. To build temples near rivers and seas was to invite their claim. When those sanctuaries drowned, it was not failure, It was fulfillment of prophecy. The traveler listens to the sea lapping against ruins near the shore. Each wave sounds like chant, like prayer without words. He realizes the temple is still alive, though it lies beneath the surface. The gods breathe differently now, through tide and current. The haunting here is not tragic but sacred. The drowned temples are not lost, but sanctified anew, guarded in silence by waters that refuse to forget. So part 2 closes with awe. The drowned temples are not ruins destroyed, but sanctuaries transformed. Beneath the sea, they breathe in rhythm with currents, carrying prayers in silence. Their haunting is not sorrow, but reverence, proof that water, though devourer, is also preserver of memory. Not all waters reveal themselves. Some slip beneath the surface, carving hidden paths under stone, flowing unseen through the foundations of cities. These underground rivers are secret veins, carrying life in silence. When cities collapse, the rivers remain, whispering in darkness. To walk in ruins is sometimes to feel the ground alive, humming faintly with currents below. These hidden waters are like memory itself, unseen, yet always moving, carrying fragments of life through time. The traveler descends into a cistern beneath the ruins. Its arches are broken, yet water still trickles through channels, pooling in shadows. He listens, and the sound is faint yet constant. Droplets striking stone, streams threading unseen corridors. He feels the presence of what lies below, a world of rivers moving without light, nourishing silence. These waters have outlasted the city above, carrying its dust into deeper chambers, blending collapse with flow. The haunting here is subtle but powerful. The city may be gone, but its waters remain faithful. History remembers such rivers. In Istanbul, the Basilica cistern still holds water beneath modern streets, its pillars rising like drowned forests. In Petra, channels carved into rock still guide hidden streams. In Jerusalem, tunnels of Hezekiah carry echoes of water flowing for millennia, built to guard a city now layered in ruin. These rivers outlast walls and empires. They are invisible guardians, sustaining life even after life has vanished, carrying fragments of memory long after memory dissolves. The traveler kneels beside the pool, watching ripples distort broken reflections of arches. He imagines priests once descending here to draw sacred water, or soldiers gathering it during siege. Each drop still carries their presence, dissolved into the stream, carried endlessly forward. Underground rivers do not forget. They preserve without witness, holding memory in silence too deep for sunlight. In myth, hidden waters were always gateways. The Greeks imagined Styx, the river beneath earth binding gods by oath. The Maya told of Xibalba, underworld of rivers and caverns where spirits lingered. In Celtic lore, wells and streams beneath ground led to realms of ancestors. The ancients knew what the traveler feels, that beneath every ruin lies another city, carved not of stone, but of water, flowing unseen, murmuring with voices that cannot vanish. At night, the traveler hears the underground river more clearly. Its murmurs rise through cracks filling the silence above. He realizes the city is not dead, but layered, its ruins haunted not only by echoes of stone, but by voices of water, always moving. The haunting here is not tragic but eternal, a reminder that memory, like water, flows beneath us, hidden yet alive. So part 3 closes with reverence. The underground rivers carry what the city has lost, dissolving its fragments into currents that never rest. To listen to them is to hear memory itself, quiet, unseen, but unending. All rivers, seen or unseen, become one in memory. The sea that drowns temples, the underground streams that murmur beneath stones, the floods that swallow cities, all are branches of the same eternal current. Water is continuity. It flows where stone cannot, carrying fragments of walls, ashes of fires, whispers of prayers. To stand in ruins is to hear not only silence, but the faint rhythm of this greater river, a stream that gathers every fragment into its endless course. This river does not forget, it carries all. The traveler sits beside a channel where water glimmers faintly in moonlight. He hears its murmur and imagines it joining other streams, flowing outward to sea. With it go grains of dust from palaces, soot from burned halls, fragments of bones from beneath streets. The river bears them all impartially, weaving them into its current. The city dissolves, but nothing vanishes. It is carried onward, transformed into motion, into memory flowing endlessly forward. History has long named this truth. The Greeks envisioned Mnemosyne, the river of remembrance counterpart to Lethe, the river of forgetting. To drink from one was to forget all. To drink from the other was to remember eternally. In Hindu tradition, the Ganges carried souls to liberation, each drop a vessel of memory. In Norse sagas, wells and rivers nourished Yggdrasil, tree of all worlds, binding past to future. Across cultures, water was never only element, it was remembrance itself, the river where ghosts flow. The traveler watches the stream vanish into darkness. He feels as though he gazes into time itself, flowing past him, carrying fragments of lives he cannot see. Perhaps the citizens of the collapsed city flow with it still. Their prayers, their laughter, their grief dissolved into current. He realizes haunting is not always in shadows or whispers. Sometimes it is in movement, in the simple persistence of water carrying fragments forward, reminding us that nothing is truly lost. In myth, the dead always cross water. Charon ferried souls across the Styx. Vikings sent ships aflame into the sea. Shamans crossed rivers to reach ancestors. These stories reveal what ruins themselves declare. Water is passage. It bears the dead. It bears memory. It bears the fragments of cities dissolved into silence. The river of memory does not judge. It carries all equally, binding them into eternity's current. As dawn nears, the traveler listens one last time. The water murmurs softly, steady and eternal. He realizes the city is not gone. It flows. Its stones, its dust, its bones, its prayers, all carried now in the river of memory, unending, unbroken. The haunting of ruins is not only silence, it is water's voice whispering forever. So part 4 closes with reverence. Rivers beneath ruins are not merely streams, they are memory itself, gathering fragments of cities into an eternal current. The haunting is not sorrow, but continuity, proof that nothing vanishes, everything flows. Every city's heart beats in its market. Their voices mingled in endless negotiation. Merchants calling, buyers responding, animals braying, coins ringing against wood. The market was the theater of desire, where hunger and hope met in constant exchange. When cities collapse, palaces may crumble into dignified silence, but markets remain restless. Their stones carry the rhythm of bargaining, their air still charged with want. To walk among ruined stalls is to hear whispers not of kings or priests, but of buyers and sellers who never ceased their endless exchange. The traveler enters a plaza where rows of columns once framed a marketplace. The stalls are gone, the awnings torn long ago, yet the ground seems crowded. Each step he takes is echoed by another, quick, impatient, circling, like feet shifting and haggling. He hears faint murmurs, layered voices rising and falling in cadences of trade. The silence is not empty. It is saturated, restless, alive with echoes of desire. The market whispers still, though its goods are dust. History remembers markets as immortal spaces. Babylon's bazaars, crowded with spices and jewels, vanished in empire's collapse, but lingered in memory through tales. The Athenian agora, once filled with debate and barter, now lies in ruin, yet still draws wanderers who feel its pulse. The Roman Forum, stripped of marble, remains restless beneath tourist steps. Even when abandoned, markets never die. They hum with whispers of commerce, as if desire itself refused to leave. The traveler pauses near a toppled fountain where once buyers gathered. He imagines merchants leaning forward, voices urgent, hands gesturing over baskets of grain, jars of oil, bolts of cloth. The goods are gone, yet the gestures remain imprinted in air, replayed faintly in silence. The haunting here is not sorrowful but restless, a murmuring that does not fade. Desire has no grave, it lingers, pacing still among broken stalls. In myth, gods of commerce were never still. Hermes of Greece, Mercury of Rome traveled markets endlessly, guiding footsteps of trade. Even after temples fell, their presence lingered at crossroads and bazaars, restless as the markets themselves. To enter ruins of a market is to feel them still, weaving through whispers, watching over bargains that no longer happen. They are not gone. They are the breath of desire that never rests. So part 1 closes with quiet awe. The market, though collapsed, remains alive in whispers. Its haunting is not of kings or warriors, but of ordinary voices, buyers, sellers, wanderers, who pressed their lives into rhythm of trade. To hear it is to know that desire survives collapse. The city may be dust, but the market still breathes. Coins once rang through these plazas like tiny bells, bronze, silver, gold. Each strike of metal against wood or stone was a heartbeat of the market. Weights clinked, scales tipped, and numbers were spoken like ritual incantations. Currency was more than exchange, it was sound, rhythm, memory. When the city fell, the coins scattered, sinking into soil, lost beneath dust. Yet the silence where they once rang is not empty. It is filled with phantom echoes, as though the stones themselves replay the chime of trade. The traveler kneels by a cracked stall, brushing aside sand. He uncovers a coin, green with corrosion, its face blurred. He lifts it, and though it no longer shines, he feels its weight. It carries voices, a merchant pressing it into a buyer's hand, a child begging for one more, a thief pocketing it in haste. The coin is mute, yet saturated. Its silence is heavy with all the exchanges it once embodied. Every piece of currency is memory condensed, still whispering though centuries have passed. History abounds with buried treasures, hoards concealed in collapse, jars of coins hidden beneath floors, caches lost when families fled conquest. Each hoard is more than wealth. It is frozen fear, desperate hope that the city might be rebuilt, that return might be possible. But return seldom came. The coins lay untouched, waiting. Their silence is currency of memory, proof that commerce never truly ends. It only shifts into haunting. The traveler imagines the last market day before the fall. Voices raised in urgency, prices shifting wildly, coins exchanged with trembling hands. Perhaps grain grew scarce, or soldiers demanded tribute, or plague emptied stalls. The air was frantic, but still the sound of currency carried through, steady and insistent. Even collapse could not silence desire, it only changed its terms. The haunting of ruins is not only absence of voices, but persistence of that rhythm, echoing in silence like coins still ringing. In myth, coins always carried souls. The Greeks placed obols in mouths of the dead, payment for Charon's ferry. The Chinese buried spirit money, believing it would serve in other worlds. Even today, coins tossed into fountains echo ancient offerings to unseen forces. To carry a coin is to carry more than metal. It is to hold desire, exchange, memory. When coins remain in ruins, their silence is not empty. It is alive with voices still bargaining across time. At dusk, the traveler lets the coin fall back to earth. It strikes stone softly, and in that faint chime he hears the echo of thousands before it. The sound fades quickly, but its impression lingers, vibrating in silence. He realizes that the true haunting of markets is not ghosts of people, but ghosts of exchange. Coins ringing invisibly, scales tipping in memory, silence that carries the weight of desire, unending. So part 2 closes with solemn wonder. The currency of silence is heavier than any gold. It proves that markets never die. They only shift from sound into memory, from chime into whisper. To walk their ruins is to hear coins still fall, endlessly, invisibly, into silence. Desire is the most restless of all ghosts. It does not die with bodies nor collapse with cities. It lingers, woven into walls, pressed into stones, saturating silence. In markets, where desire was most concentrated, lust for wealth, hunger for food, craving for beauty, it remains thickest. To walk through ruined bazaars is to feel it crowding, invisible yet insistent. The goods are gone, the voices silenced, but the longing endures. Desire does not need flesh to survive. It haunts as hunger itself. The traveler wanders through rows of broken stalls. The ground is cracked, the awnings long dissolved, yet he feels surrounded. Desire presses from every direction. a whisper for grain, a plea for cloth, a bargain for jewels. The stalls are empty, but the atmosphere is crowded with wants that never ceased. He realizes he is not alone. The ghosts of desire are everywhere, restless, pacing, endless. History shows how markets magnified this hunger. Babylon's bazaars glowed with spices, perfumes, fabrics that drew longing from distant lands. Rome's forums overflowed with goods plundered from conquests, each object carrying stories of desire fulfilled and unfulfilled. Even when cities fell, their treasures were looted, hidden, or buried. What remained was not satisfaction, but yearning. Proof that desire never ends, only shifts. Ruins today still hum with that rhythm, silent, yet filled with hunger pressing outward. The traveler pauses beside a toppled pillar. He feels the air thick, as though invisible figures brush past him, hands reaching for wares that no longer exist. Their whispers are faint, unintelligible, but urgent. He realizes the haunting here is not sorrow, but craving. Desire does not rest in graves. It roams endlessly, returning again and again to places where it once burned brightest. Markets are restless because longing itself never dies. In myth, desire was often eternal. Tantalus reached forever for fruit he could never grasp. The Norse Nibelung horde cursed all who sought it, ensuring longing without end. In Buddhist tales, craving bound souls to cycles of rebirth. Across cultures, desire was seen as the most enduring force, more eternal than life, more enduring than death. Ruined markets prove this truth. Their silence is alive not with ghosts of people, but with ghosts of wanting itself. The traveler closes his eyes and the murmurs swell. He feels himself pulled into their current, his own longings joining theirs. For who is free of desire? Hunger, hope, fear, love, each is form of craving. He realizes the haunting of markets is also mirror. They do not only preserve the desires of the dead, they awaken the desires of the living, binding both together in silence. So part 3 closes with uneasy reverence. The ghosts of desire are eternal, haunting markets even after collapse. They are not shadows of bodies, but shadows of longing itself, restless and unquenched. To walk through their ruins is to feel hunger still alive, whispering, waiting. Markets never truly end. Their stalls collapse, their goods vanish, their voices fall silent, yet the rhythm of exchange lingers. Footsteps echo as if buyers still circle. Coins ring faintly in silence. Desires press invisibly against broken walls. The city may be gone, but the market continues, restless, eternal, alive in memory. It is a bazaar of shadows, a place where longing itself keeps doors open, where silence becomes transaction. The market never closes, for desire never sleeps. The traveler enters the plaza at night. The moon hangs above, pale and cold, yet the air feels crowded. He hears faint echoes, murmurs blending with footsteps, whispers folding into silence. No stalls stand, yet he feels them. Rows of awnings stretched above, baskets laid out, torches flickering. He walks through absence yet senses presence, as though the market has only shifted form, existing now in memory and shadow. He realizes he is not alone. No traveler is, in markets that never close. History confirms this endurance. Cities rose and fell, but trade survived collapse. After Troy burned, merchants returned to barter on its ashes. After Rome declined, its forums remained gathering places for centuries. Even in modern ruins, markets revive briefly, locals selling wares to travelers among broken walls, echoing the ancient rhythm. The structures collapse, but the market continues, proving itself immortal. Its haunting is not nostalgia, it is persistence, desire made eternal. The traveler pauses at the center of the square. He closes his eyes and listens. He hears coins falling softly, voices rising in bargain, children laughing, animals shifting against ropes. The sounds are faint, yet layered, endless. The market has no closing hour, no silence too deep. It is always alive, always humming. Its eternity is not in goods, but in longing, not in stalls, but in whispers. The market survives because desire survives, and desire has no grave. In myth, markets were never merely earthly. Hermes and Mercury wandered eternally. gods of exchange who walked between realms. The Maya envisioned markets in the afterlife where souls still bartered. Even the Norse spoke of treasures hoarded in death, carried into halls of the dead. Across cultures, commerce extended beyond collapse, a recognition that longing continues forever. The market that never closes is not only ruin, it is eternity. As dawn nears, the traveler steps away. Behind him, the plaza remains silent yet alive, filled with whispers he can no longer hear, but knows continue. He realizes the haunting is not of ghosts at all, but of motion, rhythm, desire, forces that outlast bodies and cities alike. The market never closes because hunger never ends, and memory itself is a form of exchange. So Part 4 closes with awe. The ruins breathe not only silence but transaction, not only absence but desire. The market that never closes endures, haunting every fallen city with whispers of footsteps, coins, and longing. It is the eternal bazaar, alive in silence, proof that desire outlasts collapse. A city's soul does not only rest in its temples or palaces, it lies also in its libraries. Shelves upon shelves of scrolls and codices once breathed with words, each a vessel of thought, each a spark of memory preserved in ink. To burn a library was to burn not only parchment, but centuries of voice. And yet words do not vanish so easily. They linger in silence, haunting those who stand among the ruins. Even when texts are ash, their weight presses invisibly, reminding us of all that should have been remembered. The traveler steps into a collapsed hall where once scribes bent over tablets, styluses scratching, ink staining fingers. Now the shelves are splintered, the walls fractured, the scrolls long turned to dust. Yet the air feels charged, alive with residue. He senses the presence of words still hovering, as though every sentence, though erased, left its shadow behind. The silence is not empty, it hums faintly, the ghost of language suspended in air. History remembers these tragedies vividly. The burning of Alexandria, where ships' fires spread to scrolls containing the wisdom of centuries. The sack of Baghdad in 1258, when the Tigris turned black with ink from countless manuscripts. The destruction of Mayan codices, reduced to ash by conquest, silencing entire traditions. Each loss was catastrophic, yet each lingers, remembered not for silence, but for haunting absence. The ghosts of words are as heavy as the words themselves. The traveler kneels and lifts a fragment of clay tablet, its markings weathered yet faintly legible. He traces the grooves, and for a moment imagines the scribe who etched them, the voice that spoke them, the hand that preserved them. Though incomplete, the fragment breathes. It speaks in silence, declaring, "I was once part of thought. I was once voice. I am not gone entirely." Even shattered, the ghost of knowledge persists, whispering across centuries. In myth, words were never easily destroyed. Egyptians believed names carved into stone lived forever. Hebrews declared that the word preceded creation itself, eternal and indestructible. In Hindu tradition, sound was cosmic rhythm, the syllable Om carrying the universe's breath. Words were more than signs, they were life itself. Thus, when libraries burned, the ancients did not believe the words died. They believed the words became ghosts, haunting silence until remembered again. The traveler rises, surrounded by shadows of unwritten voices. He realizes the true haunting of libraries is not what remains, but what is missing. The silence feels too heavy, for it carries absence, the weight of knowledge lost forever. Yet within that absence is also presence, the ash of words lingering, whispering faintly in imagination. So Part 1 closes with reverence. Libraries, even in ruin, are never silent. They breathe with ghosts of words, shadows of knowledge, fragments of voices that refuse to vanish. Their haunting is sharper than footsteps, deeper than echoes. It is the ache of memory erased, yet still alive. Ink dries quickly on parchment, yet its presence endures beyond its surface. Words copied by scribes centuries ago still ripple outward, carried from voice to voice, memory to memory. Even when scrolls turn to ash, the ink flows invisibly through those who once read them, who repeated them, who carried fragments forward. A library may burn, but its words rarely perish entirely. They dissolve into silence and memory, becoming ghosts that drift endlessly, waiting for rediscovery. The traveler pauses in the ruins of a scriptorium. Tables lie overturned, charred at their edges, but fragments of parchment remain. Blackened curls, faint stains of ink on brittle scraps. He imagines the scribes who once labored here, bent over in lamplight, copying lines from older scrolls, each stroke of ink a bridge across time. Their hands are dust, their scrolls dissolved, yet the ink flows still. It lingers not in matter, but in memory, in haunting presence of words too stubborn to die. History reveals this endurance. After the burning of Alexandria, fragments of its text survived through quotation in other works, ghostly echoes of lost scrolls. Babylonian epics, inscribed on clay, traveled into Hebrew psalms and Greek poetry, flowing silently across cultures. Even after Mayan codices were destroyed, their glyphs returned in songs, rituals, and carvings, proving that memory preserves what fire cannot. The ink flowed onward, invisible but insistent, threading ruins with whispers. The traveler lifts a scrap of parchment and sees faint traces of lines, illegible yet alive. He feels its weight as though holding an entire vanished world. The words are gone, but the impression remains. He realizes ink is not only pigment but presence, saturating the air even after fire. Libraries may be destroyed, but the knowledge they carried seeps outward, staining silence itself. The haunting here is not emptiness, it is overflow, ink spreading endlessly across time. In myth, ink was often likened to blood. In Egypt, Thoth recorded lives with ink that never faded. In China, calligraphy was sacred, each brushstroke considered vessel of soul. The Hebrews spoke of words written on the heart, indelible, beyond erasure. Across cultures, ink was life force, flowing not only on parchment but into memory. Thus, when scrolls burned, the ink did not end. It transformed, continuing invisibly, haunting silence with its unyielding flow. The traveler walks deeper into the ruins, and he feels it clearly now. The presence of words still flowing. He cannot read them, cannot grasp their full shape, but they press against him like a tide. He realizes knowledge is never fully lost. It changes form, moving from ink into silence, from parchment into presence. This is why libraries haunt so deeply, because their words never end. They continue flowing even when unseen. So part 2 closes with awe. The ink that once stained parchment now stains silence itself, flowing invisibly through ruins, haunting with the presence of words that endure. Libraries may fall, but their ink never dries. It flows still, eternal, restless, alive. Before books became ghosts, they were born from hands. Scribes bent over tables in dim lamplight, whispering as they worked, each word repeated softly while the pen traced its shape. They were vessels of memory, breathing voices into clay, parchment, or papyrus. Their whispers filled libraries as much as the rustle of pages or the crack of parchment. Even now, when their halls are ruins, their murmurs seem to remain, soft, rhythmic, unending. The silence of libraries is never pure silence. It hums with scribes still at work. The traveler pauses in the broken chamber of a library. The roof is collapsed, but niches for scrolls remain, carved into walls like empty mouths. He closes his eyes and listens. At first, he hears only wind, but then, faintly, he senses it. The steady murmur of voices, low and repetitive, as though dozens of scribes still bend over their texts. He knows it is silence playing tricks, yet it feels undeniable. The scribes whisper still, though their hands are dust. History honors these forgotten keepers. In Mesopotamia, scribes etched the Epic of Gilgamesh into clay, preserving stories that survived empires. In Egypt, temple scribes filled walls with hymns to gods, their words enduring long after their lips ceased. In medieval monasteries, monks copied by candlelight, their manuscripts glowing in golden ink. Their labor was endless repetition, yet through repetition, eternity was reached. Even after conquest, when libraries were burned, fragments of their work endured. Their whispers proved stronger than fire. The traveler moves between the niches. He feels the air charged, as if each one still holds scrolls. He imagines the scratching of pens, the murmurs of men repeating lines, the soft sigh of tired breath. These sounds are not truly there, yet the silence carries them, replaying centuries of effort. The haunting here is not sorrowful but devoted. The scribes remain, whispering in absence, guarding knowledge even when parchment is ash. In myth, scribes were often divine. Thoth in Egypt measured the world with pen and ink. Nabu in Babylon inscribed destinies upon tablets of heaven. Hermes carried words between gods and mortals, messenger and recorder both. To write was not labor alone. It was sacred, binding thought to eternity. Thus scribes became immortal in silence. Their whispers linger because their work was never only theirs. They were voices of something greater, memory itself given form. The traveler kneels in the center of the hall. He bows his head as though joining their rhythm. He whispers a word softly, and the silence seems to accept it, folding it into the murmurs already present. He realizes then, the whispers of scribes never ended. Each voice is added to theirs, each word continuing the chain. Libraries are haunted not because they are empty, but because they are still full of whispers that refuse to fade. So part 3 closes with reverence. The scribes remain, whispering through silence, copying words that no longer exist, preserving knowledge through presence alone. Their haunting is not grief, but devotion, an echo of memory that refuses to rest. Even when shelves are empty and scrolls are ash, a library is never gone. Its stones remember the weight of knowledge, its walls hold the rhythm of words once spoken, its silence vibrates with memory. A library, even in ruin, continues to dream. It dreams of voices reciting, of pens scratching, of lamps burning late into night. It dreams of words unbroken, of knowledge intact, of thought never lost. In ruins, one feels this dream most keenly, a library that no longer is, yet still breathes in silence. The traveler enters a vast chamber where only fragments of shelves remain. Dust lies thick, but the air feels strangely alive. He senses he has stepped not into emptiness, but into imagination itself. Around him, shadows of books rise, faint but insistent. He feels surrounded by unwritten shelves, as though the library has conjured itself from memory. The silence hums like a mind in sleep, full of dreams too heavy to vanish. History suggests this persistence. Though Alexandria's scrolls burned, fragments survived in other works, as if the library's dream refused to end. In Baghdad, the floodwaters of the Tigris carried ink into currents, spreading voices invisibly downstream. The Mayan codices destroyed by fire returned centuries later through fragments remembered in songs and carvings. Libraries may collapse, but their dreams scatter like seeds. They return in fragments, refusing erasure. The dream continues, alive in memory, alive in silence. The traveler kneels in the center of the hall. He closes his eyes and the silence transforms. He hears faint recitations, the rhythm of poetry, the hum of debate. He sees scribes bending over parchment, students leaning forward in concentration, philosophers pacing in thought. None are truly there, yet their presence is undeniable. The library dreams them still, and in its dream, they remain alive. The haunting here is not grief, but continuity, a mind unending. In myth, memory itself was often imagined as library. The Greeks envisioned Mnemosyne as mother of muses, her river carrying all thought. Hindus described the Akashic record, an invisible archive containing every word ever spoken. Medieval mystics dreamed of celestial libraries guarded by angels. These myths reflected intuition. Knowledge never dies, it only changes form. When libraries collapse, their essence shifts into dream, alive in silence, alive in imagination. The traveler rises slowly, and as he leaves, he feels the dream follow him. He realizes he has become part of it now, carrying fragments within his own memory. Every reader, every traveler, every listener extends the library's dream, ensuring it continues. The library does not vanish, it disperses, weaving itself into those who remember. Its haunting is eternal, its dream unbroken. So part 4 closes with solemn awe. The library that dreams is proof that knowledge never ends. Even in ruin, it lives in silence, in memory, in imagination. To walk among its stones is to step into a dream that cannot die. When belief fades, when rituals cease, when priests vanish into dust, the gods carved in stone remain. Their temples may collapse, their names may be forgotten, but their faces endure, watching with eyes that never close. Time erodes their features, yet even broken they command reverence. The gods of stone are not alive, yet they are not dead. They linger in silence, presences carved so deeply into matter that collapse cannot erase them. To walk among their statues is to feel worship still breathing. The traveler enters a temple court where shattered idols lie toppled, their torsos fractured, their heads half buried in sand. He kneels before one broken face, its mouth gone, its eyes worn smooth. Yet even without detail, the impression of divinity is overwhelming. He feels gaze upon him, silent yet insistent. He realizes belief may fade, but form persists. The stone itself remembers divinity, carrying its presence forward even when language fails. History abounds with such gods. The colossal statues of Egypt still rise against the desert sky, their features scarred yet undeniable. The Olympian ruins of Greece still breathe with presence, even when only fragments of column or torso remain. In South America, vast stone figures stand beneath jungles, their gods watching through roots and vines. Across all lands, divinity carved in stone refuses to vanish. The people fall, but their gods endure, haunting in silence. The traveler walks slowly among them. Each figure carries a different weight, some serene, some fierce, some tender, some cold. None speak, yet all breathe. He feels the air charged, heavy with centuries of reverence pressed into form. These are not merely sculptures, they are vessels. Their presence is not imagination but atmosphere, memory made solid, haunting made visible. In myth, stone was often chosen for gods because it endures. The Greeks told of Pygmalion's statue brought to life by Aphrodite, proving that form itself could summon divinity. The Hebrews warned against idols of stone, fearing their power to hold presence even when worship was forbidden. The Maya carved deities in basalt and granite, believing their essence resided within. Stone was permanence, and permanence became divine. The traveler pauses before a figure eroded beyond recognition. It has no face, no name, yet still radiates presence. He bows without meaning to, humbled by silence heavier than words. He realizes then, the gods of stone do not need worshippers. They endure in matter itself, haunted by centuries of belief carved into them. Their haunting is eternal, their faces witnesses to civilizations that have already vanished. So part one closes with awe. The gods of stone endure beyond collapse. Their forms, though broken, breathe with presence, haunting ruins with divinity that never fades. To stand before them is to stand in the silence of worship eternal. Temples are more than architecture. They are lungs carved from stone, inhaling prayers and exhaling silence. Even in ruin they breathe. Their columns rise like ribs. Their chambers expand like hearts. Their courtyards pulse faintly with presence. When priests are gone and offerings forgotten, the stones continue to inhale memory, to exhale reverence. A ruined temple is never lifeless. It is alive in silence, a body of divinity still breathing. The traveler enters such a sanctuary. Its roof is collapsed, vines curl across its walls, but its form remains. As he steps inside, the air changes. The silence thickens, charged as though unseen lungs fill and release. He pauses, sensing rhythm, not of wind, not of earth, but of the temple itself. It is breathing, slowly, heavily, deeply. He feels watched, surrounded, not by people, but by presence. The gods may be forgotten, but their house remains alive. History shows how temples outlast their worshippers. In Karnak, colossal halls echo still, their silence as heavy as ritual once was. In Angkor, jungle presses against stone, yet the sanctuaries breathe beneath roots, alive in shadow. In Teotihuacan, pyramids rise deserted, but their steps vibrate faintly when walked, as though echoing countless feet before. These are not ruins alone, they are temples that breathe, exhaling memory into silence. The traveler places his hand against a column, and it feels warm though the stone is cold. He imagines centuries of hands pressing there, each one leaving faint impression, each one layering memory into stone. He realizes the temple breathes because it is full of presence, saturated with centuries of reverence that no collapse can erase. Its silence is alive, carrying whispers of worship forward into eternity. In myth, temples were always seen as living. The Greeks imagined them as bodies of gods, their columns ribs, their chambers hearts. In Egypt, each sanctuary was infused with Ka, life force of the divine. In Hindu tradition, a consecrated temple was not symbol but dwelling, a god alive in matter. These beliefs explain what the traveler feels. Even when broken, the temple continues to breathe. Its haunting is not illusion, but continuity. At dusk, shadows stretch across the sanctuary floor. The traveler hears nothing, yet feels movement, the slow, heavy respiration of silence itself. He bows his head, not to stone alone, but to presence that endures within it. He realizes the gods are not entirely gone. They linger in their temples, which still breathe long after voices have faded. So part 2 closes with reverence. Temples are lungs of the divine, alive even in ruin. To walk within them is to breathe with them, to share silence with gods of stone who never fully leave. Statues do not see, yet they look. Their eyes, carved in stone, remain fixed forever, unblinking, unbroken by centuries. Even when eroded smooth, even when shattered, their gaze persists. In ruins, these statues do more than decorate. They haunt. They watch with silence heavier than voices, with presence deeper than absence. To stand before them is to feel observed, judged, remembered by gods who will not close their eyes. The traveler enters a court lined with toppled figures. Some lie headless, torsos broken. Others remain upright, faces weathered but intact. He feels the weight of their gaze immediately. Even blind eyes carved centuries ago still radiate focus. He senses a tension pressing against him, a watchfulness too strong to be dismissed. These statues do not need sight. They are sight. Their presence alone sees. History is full of such watchers. The Colossi of Egypt, seated against desert sky, gaze endlessly over sands. The Moai of Easter Island face inland, silent sentinels guarding their people. In Greece and Rome, statues of gods and emperors were said to turn their gaze upon the living, demanding reverence. Even when broken, fragments of faces, an eye, a brow, a faint curve of mouth, preserve the sense of being watched. The gaze of stone does not fade with collapse. The traveler pauses before one figure, its features eroded beyond recognition. Yet he feels judged, as though the stone still remembers its god. He bows unconsciously, not out of belief, but out of presence. The haunting here is not sound, but gaze, the invisible thread binding living to stone, reminding him he is never unseen. In myth, statues often awakened. The Greeks told of Pygmalion's ivory Galatea kissed into life. The Hebrews warned against idols that see not, hear not, speak not, though fear of their gaze persisted. In Mesopotamia, divine statues were bathed and dressed, treated as gods themselves. Across cultures, the line between stone and divinity was thin. To carve a face was to invite presence, and presence, once invited, never left. The traveler steps deeper into the court. Shadows stretch across the statues, yet their gaze only sharpens. He feels surrounded, as though a congregation watches silently, waiting for his gesture. He realizes the haunting of statues is not illusion, it is continuity. Eyes carved once still see, even when their temples collapse. Their gaze lingers as long as stone itself. So part 3 closes with solemn unease. Statues watch forever. Their gaze is eternal, unblinking, undimmed by centuries. To walk among them is to feel seen by gods who never leave, by presences that endure beyond collapse. Every ruin becomes a pantheon. Temples cracked by time, statues toppled into dust, idols buried in earth, all gather together in silence, their presence blending. Though worshippers are gone, though rituals have ceased, the gods of stone do not vanish. They merge into one vast assembly, a silent pantheon haunting every fallen city. The traveler who steps among them feels not fragments, but totality. A gathering of presences, still watching, still enduring, still divine. The traveler enters a vast court at dusk. Columns rise like broken ribs, statues lean at angles, faces eroded by wind. Yet he feels the weight of congregation. It is as though hundreds of eyes gather upon him, thousands of breaths press invisibly in the air. He realizes this is no longer one temple, but all temples layered together. The silent pantheon stretches beyond walls and cities, uniting every ruin in a single breath of divinity. History confirms this blending. When Rome rose, it absorbed gods from every conquered land, filling its pantheon with countless presences. When Greece spread, its temples housed local deities beside Olympians, merging faiths into one vast assembly. Even Christianity, rising over ruins, absorbed faces of gods into saints and angels. Collapse did not erase the pantheon, it expanded it, folding every fallen god into the silence of ruins. Now, all stone presences belong together, haunting as one. The traveler pauses before a fractured idol, its body half buried. Behind it looms another, different in style and origin, yet together they seem united. He feels no rivalry, no distinction, only shared presence. The gods of stone no longer need worship or temples. They breathe together in silence, their haunting collective, their gaze eternal. The pantheon has grown vast, encompassing all faiths, all ruins, all presences carved in stone. In myth, such gatherings were foretold. The Greeks imagined all gods seated upon Olympus watching the world below. Hindus spoke of countless deities emanating from one source. The Maya carved endless divine figures into their temples, merging human and cosmic form. These visions echo what ruins reveal. Every god endures, and together they form an assembly without boundaries, a pantheon without end. Its silence is not absence, but density, too full for words. The traveler bows in the center of the court. He feels awe, reverence, fear. The air is alive with presence, pressing so strongly that breath feels heavy. He realizes that gods do not need names or rituals to endure. Their stone forms have merged into one pantheon vast as silence itself. To walk among ruins is to step into their assembly, to become part of the gathering that never ends. So part 4 closes with solemn wonder. The gods of stone endure not separately but together, merged into a silent pantheon haunting every fallen city. Their presence is eternal, their gaze unbroken. To walk their ruins is to walk within divinity itself, breathing silence alive with gods. Daylight reveals the brokenness of cities. Walls collapsed, streets fractured, statues toppled. But it is night that transforms them. Darkness covers ruin with a single hand, smoothing cracks, blurring edges, weaving silence into mystery. Under moon and stars, the city does not look destroyed, it looks eternal, as though collapse itself has become sacred. The night is not emptiness but cloak, gathering ruins into its folds, carrying them into dream. The traveler enters a fallen forum at dusk. Columns stand like silhouettes, their details erased by shadow. The last rays of sun slip away, and suddenly the space feels alive. Cracks vanish into darkness, weeds disappear, and silence deepens into presence. He feels the city breathe differently now, not in the broken rhythm of ruin, but in the steady pulse of shadow. Night is not end, it is transformation. History remembers this power. Travelers in Greece wrote of temples glowing beneath moonlight, their ruins alive with majesty. In Egypt, pyramids shone against stars, appearing less tombs than stairways to heaven. Medieval wanderers feared ruins by night, believing spirits walked freely when shadows gathered. Even now, cities abandoned to silence become otherworldly after sunset, their stones indistinguishable from eternity. The night covers collapse, making ruins appear vast, endless, alive. The traveler lifts his gaze to the sky. Stars scatter above, reflected faintly in broken marble. He feels the ruins merge with heavens, their fragments dissolving into constellations. The silence of night does not mourn, it sanctifies. Darkness does not erase, it restores, transforming ruins into cathedral of shadow. To walk here at night is not to see death, but to feel eternity pressing in. In myth, night was always sacred. Nyx, the Greek goddess, was feared even by Zeus, her cloak greater than his thunder. The Egyptians saw Nut arching across sky, swallowing sun each evening. In Hindu tradition, night is Kali, devouring yet fertile, shrouding the world before rebirth. These visions echo what ruins reveal. Night is not destruction, but transformation, a vast presence carrying cities into dream. The traveler walks slowly, each step softened by shadow. He realizes the haunting of ruins at night is not terror, but reverence. The darkness cloaks all equally. Broken walls, empty streets, silent statues, and makes them whole again. The ruin does not end. It is gathered into night's embrace. So part 1 closes with awe. The cloak of shadow is the final garment of cities, transforming collapse into eternity. To walk ruins beneath the stars is to feel their silence alive, sanctified by darkness, haunting not with fear but with wonder. If night is the cloak, the moon is its lantern. Where the sun exposes ruin harshly, the moon softens. Its light is pale, diffused, spectral. It touches stone gently, filling cracks with silver, tracing broken edges with glow. Under its gaze, ruins appear alive again, not as they were, but as something dreamlike, suspended between presence and absence. The moon does not illuminate, it awakens, breathing faint life into fragments. The traveler steps into a colonnade bathed in moonlight. Each column shines faintly, edges softened, shadows stretched long. Where daylight showed erosion, the moon reveals form, lines more graceful, proportions more perfect, as if the gods themselves returned to shape them in silver. The stones no longer seem broken, they seem timeless, glowing softly against darkness. He feels the city alive again, not with people, but with light itself. History often revered this glow. Greek poets wrote of temples gleaming in night, their stones appearing more divine beneath moon than beneath sun. Roman ruins, even in decline, were said to shimmer as if gods still dwelt among them. In the east, pagodas lit by moonlight became visions of eternity, their forms blending earth and sky. The moon's touch gave ruins second life, not in flesh, but in haunting presence of light. The traveler kneels and touches the stone. It is cold, yet beneath moonlight it feels warm, alive. He imagines priests once offering prayers at night, guided by lunar glow. Perhaps they too felt the presence of eternity more keenly here, when the city glowed not with torches but with celestial light. The haunting is not sorrow, it is reverence, a recognition that ruins remain alive in cycles of shadow and silver. In myth, the moon was always guardian of ruins. Selene rode her chariot across broken lands, bathing them in light. Artemis wandered wild places, her glow haunting forests and temples alike. In Hindu vision, Chandra carried calm radiance, cooling what day's heat consumed. The moon was presence, not absence, its glow a promise that even in collapse, beauty endures. The traveler lingers until silence itself seems silver. The stones breathe differently beneath the moon, their shadows soft, their light eternal. He feels awe, not fear, walking through ruins alive with glow. For in moonlight, the city does not seem dead, it seems dreaming. Its fragments merge with light, its silence sings softly. So part 2 closes with reverence. The moonlit stones remind us that ruins do not vanish in darkness. They awaken in silver glow. Their haunting is not of terror but of dream, a beauty that persists beyond collapse, alive in light eternal. Midnight is the hour when ruins grow deepest. Twilight softens them, moonlight adorns them, but midnight strips them bare, immersing them in silence vast as ocean. The air cools, winds pause, even animals grow still. The city falls into breathless quiet, as though it too has surrendered to sleep. Yet this sleep is uneasy, heavy with memory. Midnight silence is not absence, it is presence too great for sound, a weight that presses upon the living with invisible hands. The traveler walks through an avenue now black with shadow. The moon has moved behind clouds, and the stars flicker faintly above. The stones are barely visible, yet he feels them surrounding him, alive in darkness. His footsteps sound louder, sharper, swallowed quickly by silence that grows denser after each strike. He pauses, listening. Nothing moves, yet he feels watched, not by eyes, but by silence itself, vast and unbroken. History often feared this hour. Roman soldiers whispered of ghostly legions that marched at midnight, their steps heard though no figures appeared. Norse tales spoke of spirits wandering freely in deepest night, when barriers between worlds thinned. Even in medieval chronicles, ruins were said to awaken most fully at midnight, their stones humming with unseen presences. These fears were not superstition alone. They reflected what silence reveals. That absence is never empty. It is full of presence too deep for words. The traveler leans against a broken wall. Its cold presses through his cloak, grounding him, yet the silence feels heavier still. He imagines the city asleep, its memories gathered into darkness, its echoes hushed. The footsteps of children, the whispers of merchants, the prayers of priests, all stilled at once, not erased but compressed into silence that hums invisibly. Midnight is not death, but concentration, memory coiled like spring, waiting to release. In myth, midnight was always threshold. The Greeks imagined Nyx, goddess of night, moving most powerfully in deepest darkness. Egyptians spoke of Ra battling Apophis in midnight hours, sun swallowed before rebirth. In Christian visions, angels and demons alike walked freely at midnight, testing souls in silence. Midnight was never void. It was the hour when presence was greatest, when silence revealed itself as alive. The traveler closes his eyes, surrendering to stillness. He breathes slowly, matching rhythm of silence until he feels city pulse faintly around him. The ruins are not dead. They are resting, gathered into midnight's embrace. He realizes haunting is not sound, but silence itself, pressing against him with weight of centuries. Midnight reveals what day conceals, that ruins are full, not empty, saturated with presence too vast for voice. So part 3 closes with solemn awe. The silence of midnight is not absence but concentration. It gathers all echoes, all presences, all memory into stillness alive with weight. To walk ruins at midnight is to walk not in emptiness, but in silence that breathes, eternal and unbroken. When silence grows deepest, the sky begins to speak. Stars scatter above ruins like sparks fallen from forgotten fires. They mirror the fragments of broken cities, stone below reflecting light above. In their presence, collapse feels less final. The ruins do not seem destroyed. They seem eternal, folded into the fabric of cosmos. Stars transform rubble into constellation, temple into altar of shadow, city into echo of heaven. Night gathers earth and sky together, binding memory into eternity. The traveler stands in the center of a plaza, his gaze lifted upward. Columns rise like silhouettes, their broken edges glowing faintly beneath the stars. The sky is vast, the ruins small, yet together they form harmony, stones echoing constellations, constellations echoing ruins. He feels the city has not vanished but ascended, its fragments mirrored in heavens. Collapse has not ended it. It has only lifted it higher. History often joined ruins with stars. The Maya built temples aligned with constellations, their broken pyramids still marking heavens with precision. The Egyptians raised pyramids as stairways to Orion, monuments guiding souls upward. Even Rome, with its fallen arches, aligned forums to solstices, binding city to sky. When cities fell, their ruins remained mirrors of cosmos. The stars preserved them, not in stone, but in light, eternal. The traveler breathes deeply, silence mingling with starlight. He senses the city rising through constellations, its fragments glowing faintly above. Perhaps its people are there too, souls scattered like stars, eternal in distance, radiant in silence. The haunting here is not sorrowful but celestial. The ruins remind him that collapse is not end, but passage, a merging of earth into sky. In myth, stars were always souls. The Greeks told of heroes lifted into constellations, their stories written across heavens. The Polynesians saw ancestors guiding voyages through starlight. In countless traditions, the dead rose as stars, eternal watchers in night. Ruins reflect this truth. Their stones collapse, but their memory shines above, carried by constellations that never fade. The traveler lingers, listening to silence beneath and gazing at light above. He realizes the city is not lost, it has ascended. Its stones remain below, its spirit shines above, bound together by night. The haunting of ruins is not darkness, but radiance, stars carrying memory into eternity. So part 4 closes with awe. The stars over ruins remind us that collapse is never final. Cities fall, but their fragments rise into constellations, their silence merging with cosmos. Night gathers them, sanctifies them, and preserves them forever in light. When cities fall, nature waits. Grass pushes through cracks in pavement, vines creep across walls, trees rise where roofs once covered. Collapse is not only silence, it is garden. Roots become architects, flowers become ornaments, forests become temples greater than any carved by hand. The ruins are not abandoned, they are inherited. The garden of ruin grows patiently, weaving beauty through brokenness, haunting with presence that is not human but eternal. The traveler enters a temple court where fig trees rise between columns. Their roots coil around stones, splitting blocks apart, embracing walls like serpents. Branches stretch above, weaving canopy where once a roof stood. He feels awe, not sorrow. The temple is not dead. It has been claimed, transformed into living cathedral. Its silence is filled not with absence, but with rustle of leaves, the hum of insects, the breath of earth itself. History offers countless such visions. Angkor Wat, swallowed by jungle, its towers wrapped in roots like living sculptures. Palmyra, its stones blooming with wildflowers after centuries of silence. Machu Picchu, hidden beneath moss and vines until rediscovered, its terraces alive with greenery. In every land, ruins prove the same truth. Nature waits, patient and unyielding, until it inherits all. The haunting is not of ghosts alone, but of gardens grown from collapse. The traveler kneels by a root thicker than his arm. It coils across the floor like muscle, splitting stones without effort. He realizes power here is not in destruction, but in patience. The root did not conquer overnight. It pressed slowly, century after century, until stone yielded. Nature does not rage, it endures, and in enduring, it prevails. In myth, forests were often imagined as ancient deities. Dryads dwelt in trees, their spirits immortal so long as roots endured. Jungles were said to reclaim cities as offerings, temples becoming altars for gods of green. Even Christian visions spoke of Eden restored, gardens rising after fall. Across traditions, nature was not enemy but eternal heir, claiming with beauty what men abandoned in pride. The traveler looks upward, branches swaying gently against sky. He feels no sorrow for the broken walls. The temple is alive in new form, sanctified by roots and leaves. The haunting here is not grief, but transformation. Stone dissolved into garden, ruin made eternal by nature's hand. So part 1 closes with reverence. Roots in stone remind us that collapse is not ending, but inheritance. Cities fall, but gardens rise. Nature claims all, patient and unyielding, sanctifying ruins with beauty that endures. If roots are the conquerors of ruins, then flowers are their poets. They arrive gently, scattering color across gray stone, their petals opening in silence where once voices rose. They do not demand, they reveal. A broken wall crowned with blossoms becomes altar. A fallen column draped in vines becomes hymn. Flowers do not erase ruin, they adorn it, writing verses of renewal upon silence. They remind us that collapse is not void, but canvas. The traveler wanders into a courtyard where wildflowers scatter across fractured floors. Bright yellows, pale blues, soft purples lean against broken tiles. Their stems grow through cracks where once mosaics gleamed. He kneels, tracing the outline of a blossom with his hand. Its petals tremble faintly in wind, fragile yet stubborn. He realizes that fragility is strength here. The flowers have survived what stone could not. Their silence is victory, delicate but eternal. History speaks often of flowers haunting ruins. Travelers to Palmyra wrote of poppies sprouting in temples, red as blood spilled centuries before. In Athens, vines wrapped the Parthenon, softening marble with green embrace. In the Andes, orchids bloom from walls of Machu Picchu, their fragrance drifting through silence. These blossoms are not intrusions. They are inheritances, gentle reminders that life persists, even when empire fades. The traveler closes his eyes and breathes deeply. The air is rich with fragrance, wild, untamed, layered with earth and bloom. He imagines the city alive again, not with markets or armies, but with flowers, each one a citizen of silence. Their colors speak where voices no longer do. Their petals proclaim what rulers never could, that life is eternal, blooming through collapse, whispering softly of endurance. In myth, flowers often rose from tragedy. The Greeks told of Hyacinthus, struck down, reborn as blossom bearing his name. Adonis, beloved of Aphrodite, became anemone. Even Christendom carried vision of lilies blooming from graves, signs of resurrection. Flowers were always more than decoration. They were proof of transformation, beauty drawn from grief, silence transfigured into bloom. The traveler lingers in the courtyard until twilight. Shadows lengthen, but blossoms glow faintly in fading light, as though carrying memory of sun. He feels awe at their persistence. They do not deny ruin. They embrace it, weaving beauty through silence. The haunting here is not heavy but tender, a reminder that life does not rage against collapse. It blossoms within it. So part 2 closes with reverence. Flowers of silence bloom where cities fall, adorning ruins with color, fragrance, and fragility stronger than stone. They are the softest haunting, the gentlest inheritance, proof that even in silence, beauty endures. Where flowers adorn gently, forests reclaim entirely. Trees rise where palaces once stood, their roots prying apart walls, their branches weaving roofs of leaves. A city swallowed by forest does not vanish. It transforms into temple of green. Silence deepens, filled with rustle of branches, call of birds, hum of unseen creatures. Collapse becomes canopy, ruin becomes grove. The haunting here is not emptiness, but abundance too vast for human measure. The traveler enters such a place. Columns stand among trunks, indistinguishable from them. Vines wrap capitals, moss carpets thresholds, sunlight falls in beams through leaves. He feels the forest breathing, vast and patient. The city is not gone. It has merged with wilderness, its stones woven into rhythm of roots and branches. He realizes this is not destruction, but return. Forests were here before cities, and they wait, eternal heirs. History shows forests always reclaim. Angkor Wat lies wrapped in strangler figs, their roots thicker than pillars. Mayan temples rise as mounds within jungle, hidden beneath centuries of growth. In Cambodia, Ta Prohm survives only because its ruins are embraced by forest, trees, and walls inseparable. These sites remind us, nature waits longer than empire, and in waiting, it wins. The traveler pauses by a tree that rises through a roofless hall. Its trunk pierces stone, its branches stretch high, its roots spread outward like veins. He touches its bark, rough and living, pulsing faintly beneath his hand. He feels more presence here than in palaces or temples. The forest is not intruder, it is priest, sanctifying ruin with life more eternal than stone. In myth, forests were always sacred. Druids of the Celts worshipped in groves, believing trees embodied gods. In Norse tradition, Yggdrasil, the world tree, bound all realms in its roots and branches. In Hindu vision, forests were places of ascetics, where gods and sages dwelt beyond human reach. To see ruins swallowed by trees is to see myth fulfilled, cities becoming temples again, consecrated by the oldest gods of all. As twilight deepens, the forest hums with unseen life. Insects stir, leaves tremble, distant cries echo. The traveler feels the city alive again, but not with people. It breathes with creatures, roots, and shadows, each one heir to silence. The haunting here is not sorrow, it is awe. The forest has returned vast and unyielding, weaving life where human hands once ruled. So part 3 closes with reverence. Forests that return remind us that cities are temporary, but nature is eternal. Collapse is not end, it is rejoining, a merging of stone into green. The ruins breathe again, sanctified by wilderness, alive with haunting deeper than silence. When collapse is complete, when stones are fractured and voices long silent, nature places her crown. Vines cascade from walls like banners, Moss covers steps like carpets. Flowers bloom across roofs, now open to sky. What once was throne of kings becomes throne of green. Palaces dissolve into groves, temples become gardens, streets turn to rivers of grass. The city is not abandoned, it is adorned, crowned by presence older and stronger than empire. The traveler enters a plaza at dawn. Sunlight filters through branches, striking broken statues clothed in ivy. Birds nest where once priests sang, butterflies drift across cracked columns. The air is fragrant, rich with earth and bloom. He sees ruin transformed, not mourned. The city is no longer a battlefield of stone and silence. It is garden, radiant in inheritance. Collapse has not ended it. It has crowned it with life. History tells the same story. In Cambodia, Ta Prohm became more famous for its trees than for its carvings, the roots the true rulers of stone. In South America, jungle covered entire cities, yet preserved them beneath canopy, revealing them centuries later, crowned in green. Even in Europe, castles abandoned became gardens, ivy climbing battlements, roses threading through ruins. Everywhere, nature crowned collapse with beauty. The traveler kneels and touches moss on a stair. It is soft, damp, alive. He feels it pulse faintly, as though earth itself rises through ruin, claiming its place. He realizes this crown is not victory, but inevitability. Cities fall, but nature waits, patient and eternal, ready to transform death into beauty. The haunting here is not sorrow, but reverence, silence crowned by green. In myth, crowns of green always symbolized immortality. Laurel wreaths of Greece crowned poets and victors, proof that glory outlasted flesh. Celts wore garlands of oak, binding themselves to strength of nature. Even Christianity spoke of crowns of life, eternal reward beyond death. Ruins crowned with ivy and blossom embody the same truth. Collapse is not end, but transformation into eternity's garden. As dusk returns, the traveler looks upon the plaza once more. Its stones glow faintly in fading light, its vines shimmer with shadow, its blossoms close softly for night. He sees not ruin, but coronation, nature placing her final wreath upon empire. The city has fallen, but in its fall it has been sanctified, crowned eternal by silence, alive with green. So part 4 closes with awe. The crown of green is the last inheritance, the final adornment placed upon ruins. Cities fall, but nature crowns them, transforming silence into garden, collapse into beauty. The haunting of ruins is not only memory, it is the living crown of green, eternal and unbroken. Beneath every ruin lies the earth, quiet yet eternal, holding memory deeper than stone. Cities rise and fall, yet soil absorbs them, layer upon layer. Foundations sink, walls crumble, bones dissolve, but nothing vanishes. All returns to earth, pressed into strata of memory. Archaeologists unearth shards, fragments, traces, but the soil itself is the true library, the dreaming earth, remembering all silently, without end. The traveler kneels on broken ground. He scoops dust in his palm, grain slipping like time between fingers. Each grain once belonged to something greater, a roof, a wall, a hand, a voice. Now it rests in soil, part of memory vast as silence. He realizes the ground is not passive. It is witness, absorbing all that falls into it. Cities may be forgotten by men, but the earth never forgets. History proves this patience. Troy was discovered not by legend alone, but by layers of soil preserving centuries of fire and rebuilding. Nineveh lay buried until ground gave up its tablets, intact beneath dust. Pompeii's earth preserved gestures of its dead, cradling them in ash until rediscovery. Each city returned not by miracle, but by soil's memory, the dreaming earth whispering through layers. The traveler closes his eyes and listens. He hears faint murmurs, not from air but from ground beneath. It hums softly, vibrations of centuries compressed into silence. He realizes earth is not dead matter. It is body of memory, alive with what it carries. To walk upon ruins is to walk upon dreams of earth, holding fragments of every voice, every step, every fall. In myth, earth was always keeper of memory. Gaia, mother of all, bore witness to gods and men alike. In Norse tales, Ymir's body became the ground, containing all creation within its flesh. The Hebrews declared, "The ground cries out, with the blood it receives." Everywhere, earth was voice whispering through soil, carrying memory deeper than stone. The traveler bows, pressing his forehead to ground. It feels cool, steady, infinite. He realizes the haunting here is not in walls or statues, but in soil itself, dreaming eternally. The earth remembers silently, patiently, forever. So part 1 closes with awe. The soil beneath ruins is not empty. It is memory incarnate. Cities dissolve, but the earth dreams them, layer upon layer, whispering through silence. Stones appear lifeless, yet they are the oldest of witnesses. Before cities rose, they endured. After cities collapse, they remain. They carry no words, yet they hold impressions, scars of chisels, stains of fire, weight of countless footsteps. When walls crumble, stones return to earth, but they do not forget. They rest like sleepers, heavy with memory, dreaming of the forms they once shaped. Their silence is not void. It is sleep. The traveler walks along a fallen wall, its blocks scattered across dust. Some lie flat, others lean precariously, but all radiate weight. He kneels and touches one, its surface rough yet worn smooth at edges where hands once pressed. He imagines it as part of a temple bearing roof and prayer. Now it lies alone, yet it still remembers the burden it carried. The stone does not resist collapse. It dreams of what it once held. History preserves these sleeping stones. At Mycenae, Cyclopean blocks rest intact, their joints precise though empires dissolved. In Egypt, broken obelisks lie half-carved in quarries, frozen in dream of what they were meant to become. In South America, vast stones remain in walls long after cities vanished, their weight defying centuries. These are not ruins only, they are dreams of stone, enduring beyond memory of men. The traveler lingers among them, sensing presence. The stones feel alive, not in movement but in patience. They breathe slowly, like giants in slumber, carrying memories within their weight. He realizes haunting here is not of ghosts or gods, but of matter itself. The earth dreams through stone, remembering without voice. In myth, stones were always sacred. The Greeks told of Deucalion and Pyrrha, who repopulated the world by casting stones that transformed into men, proof that stone carries potential of life. In Celtic lore, standing stones marked graves, their silence filled with ancestral presence. In Hebrew scripture, altars of uncut stone were commanded, as though raw earth itself bore sanctity. Stones were never mute. They were vessels of dream. The traveler presses his ear against one block, listening. At first he hears only wind. Then faintly he senses a hum, not sound, but vibration, slow and endless. It is the stone's dream, heavy with centuries, alive with silence too deep for speech. He understands that stones, though scattered, never cease to remember. Their sleep is eternity. So part 2 closes with solemn awe. The stones that sleep are not dead, they are dreaming. Each block carries memory of burden, each fragment hums with silence of what it once upheld. To walk among them is to walk in a field of sleepers, the earth itself dreaming through stone. Dust is the smallest fragment of ruin, yet it carries the greatest weight. It drifts silently through halls, settles upon statues, gathers in corners of collapsed rooms. Each grain is a fragment of something larger: roof, column, bone, breath. Dust is memory reduced, city dissolved into particles light enough to rise again with wind. It remembers in ways imperceptible, haunting not through form, but through presence. To breathe in ruins is to breathe history itself, the dust of lives long gone. The traveler moves through a chamber where shafts of light reveal swirling dust. Each mote dances slowly, suspended in air, luminous against shadow. He reaches out, and the particles cling to his fingers. They are weightless, yet infinite. He realizes each speck is fragment of city, an empire reduced to shimmer, a voice dissolved into haze. Dust is the most patient of archivists, preserving not structure but essence, invisible yet eternal. History often speaks of dust as fate. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, whispered in funerary rites, reminding that all returns to earth. In Gilgamesh, the underworld is called the House of Dust, where kings and beggars dwell alike. In Rome, ruins were described as urbs pulveris, the city of powder. And yet, dust was also reverence. Relics of saints crumbled into dust were carried as holy, fragments alive with memory of presence. Dust was annihilation, but also sanctity. The traveler kneels, brushing dust from a fragment of wall. It rises instantly, swirling into air. He realizes dust resists possession. It will not stay contained. It spreads endlessly, carried by wind, absorbed by soil, dissolved into lungs. The haunting here is not stillness but movement. Dust drifts ceaselessly, carrying fragments of cities far beyond their boundaries. Every storm that lifts it is resurrection, every breath an unwitting remembrance. In myth, dust often spoke. The Hebrews declared the ground itself cried out with the blood of Abel. The Greeks told of bones crumbling into powder that still carried essence of heroes. The Navajo sang of holy wind within dust, breath of ancestors filling the world. Dust was never mere debris. It was voice of the earth whispering in fragments too fine for sight. The traveler exhales, and dust scatters in his breath. He feels humbled, almost reverent, knowing he carries fragments of the city within him now. Its ruins enter his body, mingling with his own breath, ensuring memory continues. The city does not rest in earth alone. It drifts into all who walk its silence. Its haunting is not confined, but universal, carried endlessly by dust that remembers. So part 3 closes with solemn wonder. Dust, though smallest, is most eternal. It preserves not form but essence, dissolving cities into presence that drifts forever. To walk among ruins is to be touched by them, to breathe their memory, to carry their haunting within. All ruins return to the earth. Palaces crumble into soil, temples collapse into dust, bones dissolve into sediment. What once stood proud as city becomes layer upon layer of memory pressed deep into ground. Yet the earth does not merely bury, it dreams. Within its depths, fragments remain, held in silence, woven into strata like chapters in a book. The dreaming earth remembers not as men do, but as eternity does, slowly, patiently, without forgetting. The traveler lies upon the ground, feeling its weight beneath him. It is cool, steady, vast. He imagines the earth breathing, each inhale gathering ruins, each exhale pressing them gently deeper. The soil beneath him holds more cities than he can name, more voices than he can imagine. Empires dissolved into layers, prayers folded into sediment, wars sealed into stone. The earth dreams them all, carrying their memory in silence. History reveals this dreaming clearly. Archaeologists peel back layers like pages. Troy built and rebuilt, each city resting upon another. Jericho rising from mounds of countless generations. Entire civilizations buried beneath fields, their presence hidden until soil yielded its dream. The ground is not blank, it is archive, storing the world's collapse in infinite patience. Cities fall, but the earth dreams them intact. The traveler closes his eyes, pressing his ear to soil. He does not hear words, but he senses a hum, deep, steady, endless. It is the resonance of memory, the sound of the world itself dreaming. The hum vibrates through him, reminding that he too will one day return, pressed into strata, folded into silence. The earth will dream him as it dreams all, without end. In myth, the earth was always dreamer. Gaia held the seeds of gods and men. The Hindus saw Vishnu resting upon serpent Ananta, dreaming worlds into being. The Maya envisioned earth as sleeping crocodile, its back bearing civilizations, its dreams shaping destiny. Across cultures, the ground was never dead, it was alive, dreaming all within it. The ruins prove these myths true. Earth carries memory, earth preserves, earth breathes silently in dream. As night falls, the traveler rises, dust clinging to his hands, soil staining his cloak. He feels humbled, small, yet connected. He realizes the earth is not only end but promise. Nothing is lost. Everything is absorbed, remembered, dreamed. The haunting of ruins is not sorrow alone, but continuity, the assurance that the earth dreams eternally. So part 4 closes with solemn reverence. The earth is final witness, final archive, final dreamer. All cities return to it, and in it they endure. To walk among ruins is to walk upon the dreaming earth, to feel beneath every step the weight of civilizations remembered forever. Every story of ruins returns to silence. Every wall, every library, every temple, every step eventually dissolves into the same rhythm. Dust falling, water flowing, night descending. We have walked through collapsed cities, listened to their echoes, felt the breath of forgotten gods, seen crowns burn into ash, and bowed before the roots that inherit all. And yet, beneath every haunting, the same truth persists. Nothing is lost. Nothing vanishes. All endures in silence, woven into Earth's eternal dream. The traveler pauses at the edge of a city, now nothing more than shadow and dust. Behind him stretch the ruins, palaces crowned in ivy, temples breathing faintly, marketplaces whispering endlessly. Beneath him lie bones. Beneath bones lie stone. Beneath stone lies soil heavy with memory. Above him stars gleam, reflecting fragments of city and constellations. Around him, wind stirs dust, carrying fragments into night. He realizes he is not leaving the city. He carries it with him, as all who walk ruins do. The silence of collapsed cities is not void. It is full. It is saturated with footsteps that never end, with prayers that never fade, with fire that never dies. Kings linger in shadow, libraries dream in ash, rivers murmur beneath stone, forests breathe through temples. Even dust, smallest and frailest, remembers. The haunting is not of ghosts alone, it is of everything. Stone, soil, air, water, memory itself. To feel it is not to fear death, but to recognize continuity. In myth, all these threads converge. The Greeks imagined Lethe and Mnemosyne, rivers of forgetting and remembrance. The Norse envisioned Ragnarok, fire consuming all before rebirth. The Hindus dreamed of endless cycles, creation and collapse repeating eternally. The Hebrews spoke of dust returning to dust, yet remembered eternally by God. Across cultures, the same vision whispers, collapse is never final. Memory persists, whether in gods, stars, soil, or silence. The traveler kneels, pressing his palm against earth. He feels its coolness, steady and infinite, carrying all who came before. He realizes he too will one day return to this dream, his footsteps fading into silence, his breath dissolving into dust. But he does not fear it. The haunting of ruins has shown him another truth. To vanish is to join eternity. Every fall is inheritance, every silence is continuation, every ruin is dream. The night deepens. Wind sighs through broken stones, stars gleam above, dust drifts like silver in moonlight. The city sleeps, yet its sleep is alive, full of memory, full of presence. The traveler closes his eyes and silence folds around him like cloak. He breathes slowly, evenly, until his breath joins the rhythm of ruins, until his body is one more echo among them. The city dreams, the earth dreams, and he dreams with them. So the journey closes, as all journeys must. We began with voices, with power, with empires that rose. We end with silence, with dust, with the earth that remembers all. Nothing is lost, nothing is gone. All is absorbed into the great dreaming silence, eternal and unbroken. The cities may fall, but their memory lingers, haunting gently, whispering endlessly. The earth's last whisper is not grief, it is lullaby. It tells us to rest, to surrender, to join the silence that holds everything. And so we listen and we sleep and we dream with the ruins, carried by the earth into eternity.